this month that Malcolm X was assassinated. There is a story about the black activist that might have been lost to history were it not for a student who came upon it by accident. And tonight, he shares that story with Jim Axelrod.
Ever since Malcolm X was killed, every detail of his life has been scoured. At least that's what Malcolm Burnley thought, until, as a senior at Brown University, he discovered a story about a campus visit.
Reading his autobiography was a really big, moment in my adolescence.
And now all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, he was on my college campus, and you didn't know about that?
And I didn't know about it, and no one knew about it.
Burnley.
New developments in that heated police encounter in Colorado. You'll remember it. We've showed it to you a few times. A black man confronted by an officer while picking up trash in his own yard. The newly released body cam footage shows how it all started. ABC's Clayton Sandell has the very latest.
I couldn't help but notice you just sitting on the patio out there. I couldn't help but notice you sitting on the patio behind this building.
From calm to chaotic in seconds.
Well, I'm just checking to make sure that you have a right to be here, that's all.
I just told you I lived here.
Okay.
I told you that I'm working as well.
Okay.
Should that be enough for you?
Newly released body camera footage shows Boulder police officer John Smiley investigating Zaid Atkinson in March for trespassing after spotting the college student picking up trash in front of his building.
The U.S. birth rate dropped last year, causing the number of births to reach the lowest level in 3 decades. A provisional report from the Centers for Disease Control found 3.8 million babies were born in 2018, while the fertility rate fell 2% compared to the year before. That means this generation isn't making enough babies to replace itself. The report also found women are waiting to have babies. The only age group to see an increase in birth rates were women aged 35 to 44.
A new report finds school segregation is on the rise across the United States, even though it has been 65 years since the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional. The landmark Brown versus Board of Education case ordered schools to start integrating in 1954, launching a movement to help end racial inequality. But according to research conducted by the Civil Rights Project, a series of Supreme Court decisions in the 1990s led to the end of hundreds of desegregation orders and plans across the country. Gary Orfield joins us now from Los Angeles. He is a professor of education, law, political science, and urban planning at UCLA. He is also the co-director of the Civil Rights Project at the university. Gary, good to have you with us.
On behalf of the 8 generations of my family who have been in this country, we're going to put a little fuel in your bus. Now, I've got the alumni over there, and this is the challenge to you alumni. This is my class, 2019. And my family is making a grant to eliminate their student loans.
The mother of Treyvon Martin, a black teenager killed in a shooting in 2012, is running for office in Florida. In a statement, Sabrina Fulton announced Saturday that she'll run for a seat on the Miami-Dade County Commission. Since her son's death, Fulton has become an outspoken anti-gun violence activist and created a nonprofit organization in his name. Treyvon Martin.
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents, it doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth.
Near Orlando, Florida last night, authorities rushed a 30-year-old shooting victim to the hospital. Today, they're making arrests for his murder. Black leaders are calling such violence America's #1 civil rights problem. But many said the answer is not in the crime bill's call for more police and prisons. Religious and political leaders agreed today to spend more time teaching respect for life and the dignity of others.
Welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. That's right, guess who's back? It's Mr. Blows Your Minds coming with another live show. being May 22nd, 2019. And first, before I get it on, first say those might be subscribers in the house. What's good, fam? I know long lost. Things been happening around here, so I wasn't able to get no show off. So I want to apologize. Again, I tried to get it on, but it seems like something always keep coming up. So you just got to be a little patient till I get back on this treadmill. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for being here. Passerbys, if you should be coming by seeing the show, this is the most hated show on the black corner of the internet. What we do for those who pass by, come by like a grand opening. Go down the aisle, see something you might like, go through the library, pick something like. If you should see something you don't like, then, I send my manager out to you. We can have a little conversation about some things, give you an IOU for a return, come back, might like something the second time. Agents, the whole system, right? Anyway, so first let me get this other spiel off. Again, I'm Mr. Blow Your Mind, your whiteologist, and this show is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, articulate, recode, unveil, decode, all those things, right? Whether it's by news, video, websites, or quotes from publications. As I, your whiteologist, ask that the creator of the universe be here by heart, mind, soul, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created this called land that they call the United States, we over here give honor to our ancestors. You know why? Because I ain't going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. All right, y'all. So, once again, another show. Again, like I said, man, I want to apologize for those who might have been anticipating, like, well, where's Mr. Blows Your Mind? I'm like, man, brother just don't have the consistency I need to have somebody on the daily. I'll be trying, y'all. Don't think I don't. I can show you some of the stuff at another time, which I will, but you can show them videos of how some things, again, you be like, things just not working. It's like, what's going on? Why my stuff always like that? But again, I'll show you at another time and we'll talk about that. So today I got a nice little show put for you together due to the simple fact that there's so much going on, especially the political thing, especially talking about this crime bill, right? There's a lot of things that are transpired in between, right, and so forth. So it's like, I thought that, as the whiteologist, my job is to connect the dots for those who don't look at things from that perspective. So what I'll do is I'll get the events, lay them out for you so that you can have an informed choice about what you understand and what you see. Now, again, I ain't trying to persuade or be pervasive in any way. I just lay it out what the facts are, right? So before we get into all that, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and about a couple of days short, about 3 days short, right? You see in the beginning, you see that the date on there was 21st. I was actually going to come on the 21st, but couldn't get in due to some other things. But the day being the 22nd, so I kind of missed, one of our greatest black prince who advocated on behalf and gave his life due to the simple fact that, again, he saw the injustices and the things that needed to be eradicated in this country. And his birthday just came. And so what we do on this show, we give honor to our ancestors over here. So what I'm going to do is start the show off. And I seen this here. Now, they may say it is 50 years, but it's actually 54 years. But it was just the fact that I'm just going to use this as to give some little commemoration to one of our greatest, even though some people may have other, ways of looking at it. But so let me show you this right quick, and we shall be right back.
It was 50 years ago this month that Malcolm X was assassinated. There is a story about the black activist that might have been lost to history were it not for a student who came upon it by accident. And tonight, he shares that story with Jim Axelrod.
Ever since Malcolm X was killed, every detail of his life has been scoured. At least that's what Malcolm Burnley thought, until, as a senior at Brown University, he discovered a story about a campus visit.
Reading his autobiography was a really big, moment in my adolescence.
And now all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, he was on my college campus, and you didn't know about that?
And I didn't know about it, and no one knew about it.
Burnley had come across a 1961 article in the Brown Daily Herald, written by a student named Catherine Pierce, who argued that integration of the races was the key to progress. Malcolm X read the article and came to Brown to push back.
My instinct was to find her phone number, hope that she was still alive, and really remember the entire story.
Burnley, named in part for Malcolm X, tracked down Kitty Pierce. It turned out she remembered it all.
He did not detract from his central thesis, which is that separation is better than segregation.
Brilliant speaker?
Brilliant speaker.
Kitty even had an audio tape of that night in Sales Hall that included her own introduction.
I now turn the platform over to Minister Malcolm X. Shabazz.
And the words of the man himself.
We who follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad absolutely reject integration because we feel that it's hypocritical and that it takes too long.
The idea that somebody like Malcolm X could come across the criticism in a student paper and say, I want to go there. Would that happen today?
No, I mean, usually probably the battle would happen on Twitter or something, if anything.
And Miss Pierce, and to the Brown Daily Herald.
Did he change your mind?
Oh, no.
In fact, Malcolm X would change his, moving closer to Pierce's belief in integration before he died 4 years after he traveled to Brown.
It was almost giddy being in the midst of something potentially interesting historically.
Time has not eroded Malcolm X's place in history, nor in her story either. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, Providence, Rhode Island.
All right, so we see that this story here was talking in a about some of student at a university had stumbled across and didn't know that historically at his university that Malcolm X had came there based on the professor had said some things as to about integration would be the best thing for this country. It would be the success of the United States. Now, in hindsight, looking at, they say hindsight is what, 40, 60, something like that, 2040, right? Okay, so in hindsight, looking back, and we see from that point to what it was today, they was then to where we are today. Is integration is the question you got to ask yourself. Does integration make the racial tension that has gone between in this nation, does it dissipate the animosity? And one would have to say, depending on who you're around, right? May depend on who you're around. But in the totality, when we look at legislations and laws and the disenfranchisement, it's still segregated. And as this show goes on, we're going to show you in 2019 of things that have been in, when we look back in hindsight, when people try to say that they did the best things to try to make this country better, who be the bearer and who be the holder? Because it sounds good when people are saying certain things in the aspect of trying to say, well, this country and integration and so forth. But okay, that's what you say. But when we look at the tangible, when we look at the fact, right, it may not be. And the funny thing is, too, here is that video clip in itself, look how they tried to say that Malcolm X was for integration. Did you catch that? You see how they slightly slicked in there, because again, it's what's really funny. If it just go to show you that the creator, I always say that the creator don't need no partner, right? The creator had Malcolm to do an autobiography. Think about what I'm saying. He had him to do an autobiography, knowing that no one in history, because who's writing about Malcolm? Think about it. The Nation of Islam don't really give the kind of historical aspect due to what transpired between the nation and Malcolm. So without the autobiography, and there's movies and so things like that, what history would there be left other than the fact that you allow other people to actually write the history for you, right? So here's a woman that they use to say, hey, you know what? I talked with Malcolm. He was steadfast in his belief at that particular time, but everybody want to talk about when he went to Mecca, right? When he went to Mecca and he seen different shades of people who were all, praising and doing, obeisance to the rock, right? He had a change of heart is what they said, right? That's what they say. But again, is that really the totality of what Malcolm thought of the time? And again, being in that region and who's controlling all that, of course you're going to see these people of other, shades or other ethnicities participate, because again, before we who got caught over here, what we call in the diaspora, right? The diaspora that happened, what they call the West and the slave trade triangle, right? Before that happened, who were the first ones to put you in bondage before that took place? So why wouldn't it not be people of other shades of ethnicity not being partakers of that same religion? So it would be kind of naive to think that if you went there that you would see. Now again, they say, well, white folks go everywhere, because again, when white folks go everywhere, they ain't really got no foundation to nowhere, no way. Let's be real about it. So they of course they're gonna glitz and glean off of other people's stuff, right? Because again, the origin predates them. So they try to get in it. So of course you're going to see nickel and dimes of other people a part of it. Now again, let's look at the time frame of that era and all this stuff that was transpiring in this country, the racial tension and so forth, and the segregation. So to see people come together, because Martin Luther King always said that the most racist period time in the United States was on a Sunday morning, due to the fact that black people went where black people worship, white people went where white people worship, Jewish people went where Jewish people worship, Hispanics, you know what I'm saying? It's the most segregated time in the United States. So that being your foundation of how you looked at things, to have gone somewhere and seen that, maybe you might have thought that, but I don't think Malcolm was that naive, right? So now looking at hindsight today, is segregation or integration what it should be? And is it rearing its head once again? Now let's give a little bit of background on Malcolm X for those who might know. Malcolm X was born in 1925. He got assassinated in 1965. Again, we know he was American Muslim, because again, American Muslim seemed to be a offshoot, not kind of with the orthodoxy of the way they look at it, right? And so we know that he was a minister for the Nation of Islam. He became, they consider him a human rights activist, right? And during the Civil Rights Movement, again, he had his feelings towards about Martin Luther King, but somewhere there was a, coming of minds again, maybe persuading one or the other. They both around about the same age at that particular time. And so we see that, before he was Malcolm X, he was Malcolm Little, came out of, I think it was Oklahoma, Nebraska. And then he ended up relocating to New York City and Harlem. And then, got the ripping and running. Matter of fact, one of his ace boon coons was who? Red Fox, right? Red Fox. Red Fox from Sanford and Son, right? That was his boy, right? That was actually who Shorty played in, when you see the Malcolm X with Spike Lee, that's actually supposed to be Red Fox, right? So when we see that Malcolm got into some mischievousness, right? You know what I'm saying? Got to larceny, burglary, and said pimping, all that other good stuff, right? That again makes it glitz and glamour for a lot of people who from the streets, when they looked at Malcolm, they could see the reflection of themselves and see that what they could obtain. But one thing most people don't talk about with Malcolm, and they don't say that Malcolm's daddy and mama had already been people who were already conscious that was in, let's say, they were Garveyites, right? And I think his father was actually a whatever the leaders of, let's just say, in the pyramidical, whatever he was running things, right? And so what I'm gonna say is, people will say that Malcolm was just this rough around the edge, street hoodlum, but in that household where he was being raised before his father got killed, right? There was some foundations being put in him, and a lot of people don't assess that to that. Yes, he got ran astray because again, after his father got killed, that bothered him. You imagine that? Of that time, or just you in general. Something happened to your father, you love your father, know what type of father your is, and then, that transpired. So he went wayward, right? So trying to find himself, and it was somehow full circle, got in. You understand? And again, it's kind of like what some people are saying about certain things aspect, but again, I won't get into that, which is when the foot soldier raised higher than the boss, it becomes a problem. I'm gonna say that again. When the foot soldier raised higher than the boss, then it becomes a problem. So again, what people don't assess the fact that this man came from genealogy, bloodline, DNA that was saturated with two parents like that. Mama had her issues after, well, think about all that, man. Can you imagine? I mean, at that time. So it wasn't like he didn't have a foundation. Matter of fact, wasn't his brother in the nation that came, you know what I'm saying? So they already had that foundation. So to excel, once he got in that position to sit down, he excelled. And still to this day, his spirit is still being felt across this nation. Young people will read that autobiography, see something in it, and gravitate to it. Now, again, white folks is going to say, race beta and all this other aspect of it. But again, 2019, where we are today, the question becomes, has this country gotten better? Has this country declined? And the question that was stated back then, integration versus separation, would that make the country better? Now, again, the politically correctness is going to be, no, integration. See, that sounds good. But when you're on the other end, when you're the one trying to integrate and everybody else finds the way to separate you, even though they don't say it openly, because black people have this thing by saying, well, we love everybody. Don't you know, black people always got this little tendency to say, we love everybody. But you never hear no one else talking about how they love black folks. Yeah, right. So, let's move on as I get onto the show. It's going to be a nice little show today. Let me look and see if anybody should be out here in the house. I got a couple people in the house. Let's see who I got up in here. Nobody, no fam up in here. All right, so okay, we're going to keep it going. All right, so again, as I said, has this nation changed? Now, you say integration. Now, here was a story that was done, right? Again, because I had took some time off due to the fact I couldn't get in, right? I couldn't get in. And so, you know what I'm going to do. For those who might be new to this show here, I'm a brother sitting on the corner, you know what I'm saying? I'm just asking you, can you put something in the cup for me? And this is how I do it. And then we're going to go to the next clip after that. So sit back for a quick second, and here we go. Let's do this. Check this out.
New developments in that heated police encounter in Colorado. You'll remember it. We've showed it to you a few times. A black man confronted by an officer while picking up trash in his own yard. The newly released body cam footage shows how it all started. ABC's Clayton Sandell has the very latest.
I couldn't help but notice you just sitting on the patio out there.
What's that?
I couldn't help but notice you sitting on the patio behind this building.
Yeah.
From calm to chaotic in seconds.
Well, I'm just checking to make sure that you have a right to be here, that's all.
I just told you I lived here.
Okay.
And I told you that I'm working as well.
Okay.
Shouldn't that be enough for you?
Newly released body camera footage shows Boulder police officer John Smiley investigating Zaid Atkinson in March for trespassing after spotting the college student picking up trash in front of his building. The tension rapidly escalates.
Sit down.
I'm not sitting down.
Then you're probably going to get tased in a second.
Why?
Because you have a weapon. Put that down.
I have a weapon?
Put it down and comply with my orders.
Atkinson refuses.
It's filming right now.
You're an idiot.
Have a seat, please.
Why would you think that you could tase me? I'm freaking picking up trash on my property.
I need to confirm it.
Which is where I live.
There's a sign.
I'm not doing anything illegal, and you're not going to tase me, officer.
A scathing internal affairs investigation finding the officer did not have probable cause to charge Atkinson with any crime and should have ended his contact as soon as Atkinson gave his name and address.
I told you many times to put it down.
And you're holding a gun.
Put it down.
And you're holding a gun.
Sir, put it down.
And you're holding a gun. How do you feel?
Put it down,
How do
sir.
you feel, officer?
More officers arrive, 8 in all, some with guns drawn.
I will not sit down. I refuse to sit down until you guys put your weapons away.
Finally, police confirm Atkinson's story,
Does he live here?
Yes.
Okay.
and the tense 22-minute standoff ends.
So we've decided that we're going to end things at this point. What a surprise. Okay.
Well, I believe that this man had approached me because I'm a black male in an all-white town.
Boulder police claim there was no evidence Atkinson was racially profiled, but say Smiley likely would have still been suspended or fired. Instead, the 14-year veteran quit the force.
Now, Boulder police say Officer Smiley had no prior discipline problems. Now, he will be paid almost $70,000 for vacation and sick days until his resignation is final in February. Atkinson's attorneys say that is unacceptable. They plan on filing a civil rights lawsuit against the city. Michael?
All right, thank you. It happens it happens too much.
That video is just infuriating
And every
to
time
watch.
you see it, it's even more infuriating.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel.
Police officer who pulled gun on man picking up trash resigns. You know I'm going to say that again. Police officer who pulled gun on man picking up trash resigns. This story was done in the NBC News. Story was done May the 17th, 2019, and this is how it reads. The police officer who pulled a gun on a man picking up trash outside his own home in Boulder, Colorado, has resigned, city officials said Thursday. Boulder's officials conducted an investigation of the March incident of Officer John Smiley confronting Zayed Atkinson outside his home. Smiley attempted to detain Atkinson, a student at the Naropa University in Boulder, asking him to prove he lived on the property. Atkins, who was black, and said after the incident that he felt he was racially profiled, showed Smiley, who was white, his student identification card, but the officer said he needed further proof. On body cameras footage the city released Thursday, Atkins can be heard saying, "I am a student. I live here. I'm doing my job." As Atkins attempted to continue to pick up trash, Smiley told him, "You're probably going to get tased," and eventually pulled out his gun, claiming Atkins' trash grabber could be used as a weapon. "You're on my property with a gun in your hand, threatened to shoot me because I'm picking up trash," Atkins said. "I don't have a weapon. This is a bucket. This is a clamp." At one point, 8 police officers were surrounding Atkinson, but they eventually left after confirming Atkinson did indeed live in the building as he claimed. Video showing part of the scene went viral on the internet, sparking outrage in the progressive Colorado city. On Thursday, the city announced the conclusion of an internal investigation, saying it found Smiley violated 2 department policies, could not substantiate claims of racial bias. However, Smiley resigned before the investigation concluded. He will be on the city's payroll until February 2020. The exchange between Officer Smiley and Mr. Atkinson does not represent the professionalism of the Boulder Police Department nor the community Boulder desires to be, City Attorney Tom Carr said in a statement. Atkinson's attorney, Siddhartha Ratha, said he thinks Smiley is getting off too easy. Boulder is essentially saying, "We're going to pay this officer and let him resign for threatening Zayed's life for racially profiling Zayed." Rathod told the Associated Press, "If you or I were to do this, we would be criminally charged. We would immediately lose our job." All right, so we back, right? So once again, it's kind of like the same old suit just reheated, meaning that the same old, right? But again, you know, some people are in here and they kind of left because, again, they kind of get offended because it seems like you offended when we start talking and showing who the underneath the cover, or if I look under the bed. These are the things that now that's just on there that just because nobody looked don't mean it don't exist, right? So we see that individuals in Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. See, a student named Zaid Atkinson, right? Was a student at Naropa University. And he is a student who means that is the property. Probably is a student that live on campus, right? And so we see that Atkins, who claims he is black, right? It's funny when you think about that, right? Anybody can be black, but everybody can't be white, right? But if you got black and a white parent, you can claim black, but you can't be white. Now, see, that's the psychosis of a lot of people, right? Y'all come up with some things that just, again, it's how you look at things, right? Everything is about the way you look at things anyway. But I don't understand if you're 50 this and 50 that, what makes you whole of that, but not half of that. You get what I'm saying? But anyway, so we see Zaid Atkinson, who claimed he is black, right? And we see that through this, let's say, one altercation. We just say this intervention of trying to prevent him from doing what he was doing, because he was, I guess that's part of his, work assignment that he out there cleaning and picking up trash, right? And so this police officer who just happens to see him, hey, buddy, you happen to be around here, something like that? You lost or something? Or can I, do you live around here? Now, again, we know we all need police for certain situations, especially when you're black and we live in the environments we live in. We got to have police because sometimes some people is just out of control, right? So we're not going to always look down on cops, but we just have to look at sometimes when the situation is not merited, and if it just happened to shoe fits and just happen to keep being the same face on it, well, then you got to say there must be something wrong there. It's not us making it up as the way it used to be, always making it up. It's always the race car. No, it's not. Maybe it's just the underneath, said under the bed. Maybe it's just the things that lie dormant that, again, only rears its head until it gets caught, and look how it end up doing. So let's look at this. So he presents his identification card, right? Now the identification card, knowing where you at. Now, let's just see if they're going to say, remember, okay, we're going to go in the story. Just remember this point I'm making. Remember they said they could not identify as it was racial profiling. Now check this out. If he gives an identification card, and the property that he is on has to be the University of Naropa University, which the cop should have known that. When he showed the ID and you seen that, what further questions were needed? Need I say that again? Do I need to say that again? If the young man, Zaid Atkinson, gives the identification card that is the student ID on the property of Naropa University, which the cop knows he is on, once he sees that, what need further questions we need to talk here? See, it just depends on who's on the review board, who's going to say, hey, man, that's some... All right, but anyway, let's move forward. So the officer goes on and says he needed further proof. It's kind of like you hearing today when they're talking about you're going to need the real ID. Did y'all hear that lately? I think I'm either gone it short or I had talked about it. The ID you got right now ain't real. They're coming up with an ID that's going to be considered the real ID. Now, wait a minute. What's the difference between my name, who my name is, if it's a, let's say, driver's license number, right? Street address might change. My weight might change, right? But my name and all the personal things that identify in the way I look when you look at the ID won't change. So what's this real ID, fake ID? We know the underlining to that. We know what you're really trying to do. So he shows ID, but he needs further proof, right? So we see that from the camera footage of the cop. You see the young man is saying, well, I'm a student here, right? Wait a minute, I'm a student here. I'm doing my job. Now, wait a minute. What round peg in the square hole don't fit here? Cop, don't you know where you at? Don't you know you on university campus? Don't you? The first thing you should be, it might be a student showing the ID. Let me go on about my long hair. No, that ain't what you're trying to do. You trying to do what? You still being persistent because something you got an itch that you trying to scratch. You got an itch you trying to scratch, right? So we see that it goes on. That again, we said you see that Atkins is saying he's like, okay, I done showed you all that. So he go back to picking up trash, right? Now the Smiley told him, you're probably gonna get tased. Wait a minute. You probably gonna get tased. Where's the psychological evaluations of most of these cops? Now, let's just be 100 with it, man. People want to say racial and all that. A lot of these mugs ain't fit mentally to be in a situation that sometimes is just dealing with the fact of there's a rationale when dealing with people. There's a rationale when you dealing with somebody. There's some things that just put yourself in a situation. If it's not life-threatening, let's work this out. Why is the first thing come out your mouth? I'm going to tase this motherfucker right here. If you don't comply and do what I'm saying, look, I'm warning, I'm about to tase your ass. What? And then after he say he going to tase, what he does next? This nigga's watching Gunsmoke or some shit. This nigga went to go get his gun. He eventually pulls his gun out, right? Now Atkins is saying with that, wait, hold on. What's that motherfucking name? Festus and shit, right? Those old school, Festus and Gunsmoke, right? Atkins was like, well, damn, all I got is a trash grabber. And I'm supposed to be using this against you. Got a gun and I got a trash grabber and you in a bucket and you saying I got weapons. But you got a gun and a taser, right? So, he's trying to de-escalate. He's trying to reason. That old cliche they try to make black people as the animals, right? Black people are always the damn animals. So they say music soothes the animal, try to calm them down. So what he's trying to do, Atkins is trying to say, wait a minute. I'm on my property, man, and you got a gun in your hand. You threaten me. You threaten to shoot me. All I'm doing is picking up trash. I don't have a whack. I got a bucket and a clamp. He's trying to reason with him to tell his ass, wait a minute, dude. Are you rationalized? Are you understanding the situation here? Why are you talking about tasing me? Why you got your gun out? What is this about? But see, we not supposed to say nothing. We're supposed to act like these are individual incidents but we see them too much. You heard at the end of that clip, you heard the football player, right? It happened too many times, too often, it's getting sickening. It is. Because there is a sickness, but ain't nobody want to look at it because, see, nobody can diagnose you. Everybody can be diagnosed. Everybody can be looked at the way you look at it. But when somebody look at your ass, oh, no, there's nothing wrong with us. We're perfect. That's why you're sick, because you think you're perfect. That's why that's why you the way you are, right? So we see that 8 police officers become, okay, now, wait a minute. They piling up now. They got 8 police officers coming about a dude picking up trash. Why y'all got 8? And they all sitting back there like a Western, about ready to draw. Itching for a scratch. Huh? But what ended up happening? Somebody on the campus had to confirm it. Because she was a white woman, her word was valid. What if it had been a little nigga over there? What, they had confirmed it then? They'd have been, hold on, let me see your ID, right? Nigga, who is you? Do you supposed to be here? But because it was a white woman, she was credible. He wasn't credible. But y'all always say we make them shits up, right? So we see that the conclusion of this is that we end up being an internal investigation, right? We know how that is. That's just procedure formality stuff, right? We're going to do an investigation. We're going to do an internal investigation, and we're going to find out if Mr. Smiley was found it. But they found that he had violated 2 department policies, right? They found that he did. But they could not. Here's the kick in the head. We found him to violate policies, but we could not substantiate claims of racial bias. What other reason would it have been? He showed you ID. He's on the campus. It is the university. What else was left? There's nothing left. But y'all cannot see your sickness. You cannot see it. It's always somebody else, but it's never you. So what does Smiley do? If Smiley knew that wasn't what he was, why did Smiley resign? Why did Smiley resign before the investigation came to a conclusion? Because he was going to be found out. So keep this in mind, is this a little backdoor for when they get in them situations, the thing get out before it, but that way it won't be finalized and then you can still go to another damn department. Need I say that again? What this is? Quit before the investigation, before we find it. Even though we said we found it, we couldn't substantiate the fact that is racial bias. But if you don't go through the process, it never can, and you could go somewhere else, hide off somewhere and get another job somewhere else. Huh? Is that what that is? And check the kick in the head is. Smiley, because he resigned before the investigation, the city payroll will still be paying him from February to 2020. He's still going to get a check from February to 2020. It's only March. Damn near a year. He damn near going to get another check, the same check that he was out there rolling around getting. He's still going to get damn near a whole nother year. Boy, the perks. I guess that's why mother's running in trying to get that job being a cop. I guess that's why you want to be a cop. There's a lot of good perks in that shit, right? All right, so it says, the exchange between the officer Smiley and Mr. Atkins does not represent the professionalism of the Boulder Police Department, nor the community Boulder designed to be. City Attorney Tom Carr said in a statement, of course you're going to say that. That is a politically correct thing to say. Of course you're not going to say, hang a sign up on this, so we don't want no niggas in our town. But you'll just say, policy-wise, we'll say, well, we don't. That's not how we condone business. But where did sundown towns come from? Huh? Where did that come from? So just because somebody did put the sign and say, we're a sundown town, don't mean that a sundown town, even though it don't state it's a sundown town, right? Am I right or am I wrong? All right, so we see that his attorney, it says Siddhartha Ratha, right? He said, well, Smiley is getting off a little too easy, don't you think? He said, wait a minute, essentially, so what Boulder, the city of Colorado was saying, essentially is saying, we're going to pay this officer and let him resign, threatening Zaya's life. He could threaten a man's life. We're going to tase him, maybe possible kill him, and lock him up. And he could just backdoor and say, you know what, I'm just going to quit. How do you still going through the process? How do you quit and that's the end of it? How does that work? Right? So the lawyer goes, he said, well, let's say, if that was the dude, you and I, the regular, again, other people may be in here listening to me, but again, it's Black Minds News. Now, I'm not against, again, I speak for my people because I understand what we go through. But when we go through this, ain't no leeway back door. You know that dude that shot that woman, that cop that shot that white woman, ain't he locked the hell up? So you can't be black and do that and there's no justification. No. But then you can do that to us and it seems like, well, we ain't find nothing wrong here. Right? Now, that's just how it is. Take it or leave it alone. Huh? You don't like it? What are you going to do about it? That's the mentality. What are you going to do about it? Just take it, right? Take it. That's it. We're just going to take it. So that's that story for those who might have seen it already. You know what I'm saying? And that's just how it is, right? That is just the everyday, monotonous, how we get down in this country that we call the United States. This is our home again. I am from the BADOS, the Black American Descendants of Slaves, and we built this place. We gave you the luxury of the life that you get on free labor. Now, many of you will sit here and say, well, my ancestors had nothing to do with it. We just came in Ellis Island. Well, guess what? By you being able to leave from wherever you came from, you still got the benefits, did you not? So I got a suggestion here. Why don't they just go ahead and put an ADOS or BADOS tax on everybody? That way you ain't got to worry if you're paying. When you go to the store and you buy your Snickers and your candy bar, they're going to take the tax out anyway. Take the 2 cents out. So guess what? They're going to be a fund. I can solve the question right there. Our ADOS tax. We ain't got to go through everybody. We ain't got to go through no legislation. We're going to make a tax, period. You got tax, you got FICA, state, you got ADOS tax. Put it in the set of slaves. How about you do that? So they can be allocated some money and stuff. Well, anyway, we'll talk about that another time. So let's look at what some of maybe the underliningness to this. Why is all this the way it is? Right? I've seen this here, right? So let me show you this right quick. This is going to be real short and quick. But you know what I got to do. I got to, for those who short on their hands, you come up in here, you got to let me hold something. You can't be just sitting up in here and don't let the brother hold nothing. I'm working in here, right? Check this out. I'll be right back.
U.S. birth rate dropped last year, causing the number of births to reach the lowest level in 3 decades. A provisional report from the Centers for Disease Control found 3.8 million babies were born in 2018, while the fertility rate fell 2% compared to the year before. That means this generation isn't making enough babies to replace itself. The report also found women are waiting to have babies. The only age group to see an increase in birth rates were women aged 35 to 44, while teen births reached a record low. The rate for premature births also grew slightly for the 4th year in a row.
All right, so we back. So, is there something going on in the physiology of the people of the United States, huh? Can't have babies, huh? 3.8 million in 2018, right? And the numbers are declining, and the only people that seem to be trying to have babies are 35 to 44 years old. I think that's a little bit old in the game. He ain't old. You know what I'm saying? Mr. Blow Your Mind makes some love to you if that's what you need from 35 to 45, but that's another time for another conference. But I'm just saying, if we're trying to build a family for the first time, you coming in at 35, 44, I guess that's why they're saying a lot of babies are coming out artistic, right? They say, oh, the eggs are a little shriveled up, you know what I'm saying, a little spoiled and that. So it's like, you know what I'm saying, you can't produce, they a little weak because you've been eating all this, you know, saturated, artificial, all this stuff, and by the time now, you know, the baby can't come to full wishing, right? So we have to say, with that being stated again, that this decline in birth. Now again, for those who are some of the subscribers, again, I think the reason why a lot of y'all got on here, because y'all seen that video that I made that went, what we call in the black corner, a viral video, right? An extinction of the white race. And somebody was, oh, you were thinking about killing white people. No. I ain't trying to kill you at all. Somebody else killing you. They ain't me. No. I ain't trying to kill you at all. It's something who created all this is doing what it got to do, because again, you can't figure out what it is that the problem is, and I guess the only way you can do it is just slowly get rid of you. You know what I'm saying? That's the only way you can do it, because you can't seem to make no changes. People going on doing what they doing, and somehow you still can't change, still slow about change. People dying. Too many things coming to this damn planet that's supposed to come here to do a purpose and can't get it because they can't obtain it unless they kissing and licking behind you. That ain't what we all supposed to be here to do. We all here on our own free will to do what we need to be doing. Not supposed to be at your every whim and being some kind of servant to you. See, that's the sickness in that, right? That somebody believe that your whole purpose of your whole existence is to serve me. So guess what? We ain't got to do nothing. Create a universe of saying, what was Sarah was barren? She was barren, couldn't have no babies. Well, look like that's what's happening here. So people 35 to 44, I guess you done already got all your education, you done got all the money in corporate right now, you ready to settle down and have a baby, right? But they saying, well, depending on who these demographics that they're talking about, primarily, I don't think people of color really have problems with having babies. I just they just have problems with economically being able to take care of them. Do I need to say that again? I'm going to say that again. Black people don't have a problem with producing and making babies. They just have a problem with economically because somebody else get to control whether you're going to make money or not make no money. It's kind of like this channel here. I'm the most hated channel in the black corner of the internet. I got just about 3,000 subscribers, been on for 7 years. And guess what? I can't get past 100 views. Why is that, y'all? Why I can't get past 100 views? Because you got me in the dead end in the corner because you don't want anybody hearing what I'm talking about. That's what that's about. So let's just say, if that being said, and these people are looking at the demographics and knowing that they're having problems with procreating. So let's say if they start to look foregone conclusion, right? They're looking down the line and they say, wow, by the year 2044, 2050, we're going to be a minority in here. So what else would make somebody so damn angry? Because they think you're going to do to them what you're doing to us. But see, we got a different heart. See, that's the problem. We can see from your perspective, and many of us can't even get in them shoes. We can't even fathom the depthness of what you will do to do what you do. That's why only certain of us are made for this. That's why I'm a whiteologist. So, our people will beg, please, kiss the foot, kiss the ring, And with all that being said, no compassion, no change. Only when it starts to become in your court. Now you have some reasoning and understanding, right? So, as I said, is this the underlining with all this anger? Because again, let's just take that situation of Ziad Atkins and the police officer. And again, he's showing ID. He knows he's on the campus and all this. But something in him, something in certain folks got this itch that it's like they, you know how they say them hunters and they want to have and put a deer head to show that they're a hunter. I got this feeling. And one day, when the world gets to go through and sift through the old master stuff, we're going to see some things that you would have never thought about that a motherfucker got. You're going to see probably niggas hanging on some motherfucker wall. I'm going to say that again. There may be some ancestors hanging on some motherfucker's wall in some of these motherfuckers' houses. Yeah, right. So now people thinking you gonna do to they people as you done did to you. That's not our heart. That's not our spirit. Now again, I'm gonna show you why we the way we is. But we got to ask the question is, why you the way you is? That's gonna be the question here today, right? All right, so let's get it here. So again, I found this story, right? I found this story right here. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Is we going backwards? Are we going backwards? I think so much done happened prior to now. A lot of bloodshed, a lot of fighting, a lot of trying to make some progress. But then people want to tell us that, well, we're not what you, the old people who keep using this race baiting and this race baiter and he's racist. And okay, if that what you say is true, then prove this fact here. All right? How is it that we in 2019 and I can pull a story up like this? Check this out. Be right back, y'all.
A new report finds school segregation is on the rise across the United States, even though it has been 65 years since the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional. The landmark Brown versus Board of Education case ordered schools to start integrating in 1954, launching a movement to help end racial inequality. But according to research conducted by the Civil Rights Project, a series of Supreme Court decisions in the 1990s led to the end of hundreds of desegregation orders and plans across the country. Gary Orfield joins us now from Los Angeles. He is a professor of education, law, political science, and urban planning at UCLA. He is also the co-director of the Civil Rights Project at the university. Gary, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you.
So, Gary, first, if you can explain what happened in the 1990s and how did these rulings affected integration in schools?
So there was a lot of progress especially from the 1960s through the late 1980s. We made the South into the most integrated part of the United States, thanks to court orders and desegregation plans. And we achieved a lot of educational gains. Beginning at the end of the 1980s and early 90s, we began to turn backwards. In 1991, the Supreme Court, in a case from Oklahoma City, said that desegregation was a temporary punishment, not a long-term requirement, and allowed school districts to return to segregated neighborhood schools and actually put pressure on court judges to end desegregation. Ever since that time, segregation's been increasing.
You know, I found this research to be really disappointing and surprising. I wonder, were any of the results surprising to you that after 65 years after Brown versus Board of Education, that school segregation is actually getting worse?
No, it's been getting worse now for over a quarter century. People just aren't paying any attention to it because they don't intend to do anything about it. We really did learn that if you worked on it, you could achieve desegregation and it would have benefits. But there was a tremendous resistance to it, and when the court gave the go-ahead to end the desegregation plans, many places ended them. There were some school districts that wanted to remain desegregated that weren't allowed to by the courts as the courts turned more conservative. The result is
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Charlotte, North Carolina was a good example of that, where the school district actually spent $1 million saying, we're not done yet. We haven't made the schools equal enough yet. And our people like desegregation. And the court ordered them to terminate the plan and reinstate neighborhood schools that were highly segregated and very unequal.
Wow. So based on your research in this study, which racial groups suffer the most from school segregation?
So both African Americans and Latinos nowadays are in schools that are about 3/4 non-white. And they are schools that are unequal in many other respects. African Americans and Latinos are in schools that are overwhelmingly poor. On the other hand, whites and Asians are in schools that are middle class. And whites are in schools that are more than 2/3 whites, even though whites are less than half of the student population of the United States now.
Senator Kamala Harris tweeted Friday, quote, Brown versus Board is personal to me. My class was only the second after busing integrated Berkeley public schools. Of course, busing legislation was debated on and off in the 70s. And as you know, it's the practice of transporting students within or outside their local schools to other schools to try to resolve segregation. What do you make of this approach, and has it actually helped?
It has helped a lot. In fact, there's powerful new research by Professor Rucker Johnson at Berkeley that shows that it makes a difference in not only how well you do, but how well you do in college, whether you finish, what kind of a job you get, what kind of income you have, and kind of what your health conditions are as adults. When you get connected into the mainstream of the society and get the privileges that come with excellent higher education, your life gets changed. And that relates to being in a school that's competitive, that has experienced teachers and administrators, demanding curriculum, and really gets you to college. Most of our highly segregated, impoverished schools don't do that. And so there's a tragic loss of talented, really dangerous loss.
And so in your opinion, and based on what you've seen, your research and all of this studying, what do you think needs to be done to reverse course to stop the rise of segregation in schools and turn the tide here?
Well, segregation is insidious and it's self-perpetuating. If your parents are segregated and they're inadequately prepared and they earn less, you're going to live in a lesser neighborhood, you're going to go to a lesser school, and you're going to be in the same path. We've got to decide we don't want to end up that way. Then there's many things you could do. And all of the things that we're talking about doing are not forcing students to attend other schools. We're setting up systems of choice that are designed to produce diverse schools and keep them diverse, and to offer better educational options at the same time. There are lots of things that have been done and worked in magnet schools that we could do at a much larger scale.
Do you see any promise on the horizon when it comes to this issue?
Yes, I do see some promise. We have students protesting for desegregation in New York City, which is in the most segregated state in the United States, which is New York. We see a statewide lawsuit for desegregation going on under state law, since the U.S. Supreme Court has shut down federal law. But we see them going on in New Jersey and Minnesota, and proceeding in Connecticut as well. Lots of people are interested in doing this. There's some very interesting experiences with two-way immersion schools educating Spanish-speaking and English-speaking students in Texas, for example.
All right. We appreciate your time and your work. Gary Orfield, thank you.
Great to be with you, and I'm glad you're paying attention to this, because we shouldn't celebrate it until we do something to realize its promise.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
School segregation's on the rise, 65 years after Brown versus Board. You know I'm going to say that again. School segregation on the rise, 65 years after Board or Brown versus the Board. The story was done May the 21st, 2019, coming from CBS News, and this is how it reads. School segregation is on the rise 65 years after the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional in the landmark Brown versus Board of Education case. According to the co-authors of a new report At the time of the ruling in 1954, schools were legally segregated under the separate but equal doctrine, and the court ordered schools to start integrating. Gary Orfield, a professor at UCLA and the co-founder of the Civil Rights Project, joined CBSN's Kenneth Craig to explain how Supreme Court decisions made in the 1990s caused schools to start becoming resegregated. Orfield co-authored a report on the issue for the Civil Rights Project, which is noted for being the nation's leading research center on issues of civil rights and racial inequalities. In 1991, the Supreme Court, in a case for Oklahoma City, said that desegregation was a temporary punishment, not a long-term requirement. He said, and a lot of school districts returned to segregated neighborhoods, schools, and put pressure on court judges to end desegregation. Ever since that time, segregation has been increasing. White students are becoming a minority in the public school systems, but they are also seeing increasingly fewer students of color in their classrooms, according to the report. The report found that the average white student attends schools that are 69% white. The average Hispanic student attends schools that are 55% Hispanic or that have a 66% mix of black and Hispanic. And similarly, the average black student attends schools that are 47% black or that have a 67% mix of black and Hispanic. Asian American students, on average, attend schools that are 24% Asian Americans. In Brown versus Board, the Supreme Court ruled that resegregated schools were inherently unequal, and students being forced to attend these schools were being denied equal rights under the 14th Amendment. A year later, the Supreme Court clarified that schools must be desegregated with all deliberate speed. But now Orfield says schools with majority brown students often lack resources and opportunities provided at predominantly white schools. African Americans and Latinos are in schools that are overwhelmingly poor, he said. On the other hand, whites and Asians are at schools that are middle class. More integrated schools would help combat racial inequity, giving all students an equal opportunity to achieve academic, career, and overall life success. Elementary schools education makes a difference in how well you do, Orfield said. Not only how well you do in college, but when you finish, what type of job you get, what kind of income you have, and what your health conditions are as adults. That relates to being in a school that is competitive and where there are experienced teachers and administrators who get you into college. Most of our impoverished schools don't do that, and it is a tragic loss of talent, a real dangerous loss. The report includes recommendations for ending school segregation, regional desegregation, implementing fair housing policies, educating the school community and staff on the importance of desegregation, training school staff in handling diversity and accountability, and serving all students when executing school choice programs. All right. Some other technical difficulties happening on the back side of here, so I'm trying to pull this up here. Look like somebody is fidgeting in the background or something usual. And I want to say what's good to my brother, Mr. Spencer 0620 out there, my brother. What's good to you as well. All right, so we see that board, Brown versus the Board of Education, the landmark case that brought the so-called blacks and whites together in the nation as into education, right? Again, we say politically correct. It sounds good. Why do I have to be? You have to be there, and I have to be there. If this is all about education. But again, I think that we as black people sometimes don't look at things as in the way when it comes to, when they say race, right? A lot of people are offended when you say race. I'm not with that color thing. I'm not, it's about classism. It's about, okay, that's part of it, right? See, sometimes people show you certain things, but you act as if you don't notice it. Right? You try to act as if like, well, that's just a figment of my imagination. That's not really the way it is, right? That's this guy, that's Mr. Blows Your Mind. He's a racist. He's a black hater. He doesn't like white folks. You ain't never hear me say that. I'm just bringing the facts. Prove the facts wrong, then I won't say that, right? So anyway, so here it is. Black folks, again, gave up a lot, right? Somebody had the grandiose idea that if we come together, as going back to the first, those who was here to see the first video with Malcolm X and about the university, and there was a correspondence between him and one of the professors who she was professing about integration is the one thing that could actually be the great thing of this United States. And Malcolm went to the university, was like, nah, segregation. But then, they say, oh, well, Malcolm went to Mecca and he changed his heart. No, okay. But anyway. So here it is that you came with the grandiose idea and say, well, we need to integrate. We're going to do this and make this law. Now, see, that sounds good, like I said. But what ended up happening is once you made the law, people started to flight, right? The schools that you would have integrated, and those, again, probably if it was around the 80s, it was busing. He was getting bused. It's kind of like those who seen Good Time. Remember when Michael went up to the school in Rogers Park, right? That was probably a good school when he come from Cabrini Green and then going up to the north up at Rogers Park, right? It was like, oh, it was a good thing getting better education, right? Think about that. A lot of black folks' mentality is grass is greener, the ice is colder as long as I'm away from my people, because where my people at, the education is terrible, the food is terrible, the environment is terrible. Okay, so I'm going to flight too. So what you do is you get the sprinkles of Negroes out amongst white folks, right? Ain't nothing wrong with that because you're trying to obtain. But why is it that there's a disparity between the education here and the education here? And then certain people will say, well, you people, you have something wrong with your mind. You're not intelligent. You're not smart, but not understanding that the game is rigged. Do I need to say that again? Why is it that certain people will sit there and look you in your eyes with a straight face and say the reason why your people the way they is as if they had the same opportunities, the same, let's say, material, same type of quality teachers as you had, and then saying, well, you just need to pull yourself by the bootstrap. But the game been rigged since the time I've been here. But you won't recognize it. You won't acknowledge that. You will act as if that's a figure of our imagination. Yet, here it is, born 65 years later, you're trying to go back because you used a case that went back in 1991 in Oklahoma City where they said, well, integration was only a temporary thing. That was just a little punishment to us. Look at the mindset there. Integration was a punishment. You're punishing. See, look at the mentality. The punishment, because you're going to be amongst them, is a punishment. I want to be separated from you. And all you who keep running up under them, you think they your friends. You think they like you. Now, is that all something and all? That depends. Again, if them the ones you say that you're your friends, your homies and all that, ask them the real question and see if they going to tell it to you straight. What do your people say when our people ain't around? Because let me tell you, let me give a personal story. I remember one time I was working this job, and they had this little company function. Now, it was all kind of skinhead, it was all kind of, yes, that's right. That's why I'm the whiteologist. I ain't going to tell you what I heard. I'm going to tell you what I know. So here it was, went there, worked. They had a little Christmas function. And my girl at the time, she like, okay, I went to her job, okay, and then she was like, I'm like, I don't want to really go there. I don't want to go there. I already know what type of these motherfuckers is, right? Okay, you want to bring your ass? Come on. You going to see something. So we go there. There was another brother that worked with me there. He brought his lady, had my lady with me. So we down there, we playing a little pool, right? Lady, little hunk, come on, let's go up and get some of this little bland-ass food. No, ain't got no season on this shit, but let's go on up there anyway, right? So we go up there. And after I left, he goes there. Now, so many of them in there, they didn't see my man sitting down there with his lady. And they get on the pool, they say, watch this nigger shot. Huh? Watch this nigger shot. Now, that's what he told me, right? Later on, he came, but he left. He like, come on, man, let's leave, man. I was like, what happened? He said, motherfucker, they tripping. I was like, I knew what it was. I knew it the whole motherfucking time, right? I knew what the fuck it was. So anyway, right? So what happened? That's how it is. So you say you got all these people that's supposed to be your homies, these your friends, right? These your friends. Ask them, what do they people, the ones not like them other ones, ask them the real question and see what they tell you. If they so good and fresh with you. Because see, these stuff like this tells you where the real heart and mind of the soul of them is at. I showed you that they know that they population, the future is getting less. So they're separating themselves, segregating, because again, they got to keep now check this slick part out. They say they're going to be the minority majority. Minority majority, meaning they're going to be the small population, but they're going to be the majority power holders in this nation. See? So again, you might have seen the show that I did when they talking about the generational wealth, that it was going to be transferred, all the money, and here's black folks ain't got no money to transfer, right? And so segregation has happened, but most of you wouldn't know because, again, most of us don't live in certain places. Some of us have a little bit of money. We can send kids in private schools and so forth and all of that. But even in them, you still see the dynamic between you and the rest of them. You don't be having a majority. And they say that they know that black and Latino schools are the ones that are the most impoverished due to the simple fact that most of the schools run off the tax base that has come from the community. And if you don't own, so that means white folks own the ghettos. Let's say that straight. Let's say it right what it is. White folks own where the ghetto is, and so they take the money about the ghetto and take it and put it where they at. So how you gonna have a high function school? How you gonna have up to date material? How you gonna have, type of teachers that's gonna be that couldn't teach? Them teachers that you get can't teach where they at. They wouldn't even hire them. You understand? Now, there ain't nothing against teachers. I'm just saying, we know that. You know what I'm saying. If you understand, you know what I'm saying. So I'm just saying, look at this. See, all that fighting, all that to get to where we is 2019, and motherfuckers slowly going back. Because that was real, again, as he said, it was temporary. Nothing is permanent with them. What the Indians say, this white man that speak up with a forked tongue. Huh? He don't never mean what he say. He just said some stuff, right? Anyway, moving on, right? So I want you to see that. You know that they're going backwards on you, right? You didn't know that. If you didn't know, you know now. Now, well, since we're talking about education, right? And since we're talking about education, did you see what this brother here did, right? See the brother at the Morehouse. Let me go ahead and show it to y'all right quick and be right back. Check this out.
On behalf of the 8 generations of my family who have been in this country, we're going to put a little fuel in your bus. Now, I've got the alumni over there, and this is the challenge to you alumni. This is my class, 2019. And my family is making a grant to eliminate their student loans. I know my class will make sure they pay this forward. And I want my class to look at these alumnus, these beautiful Morehouse brothers, and let's make sure every class has the same opportunity going forward.
All right, so we see Robert F. Smith. Robert Frederick Smith, right? Born December 1st, 1962. Is considered an American businessman, investor, philanthropist, right? As a former chemical engineer and investment banker, he is the founder and chairman and CEO of the private equity firm Vista Equity Partners. In 2018, Mr. Smith was ranked by Forbes as the 163rd richest person in America. He was number 480 on Forbes' 2018 list of the world's billionaires with a net worth of about $4.4 billion. Smith was also included in Vanity Fair new establishment list in 2017. Smith was named by Forbes as one of the 100 greatest living business minds. And also in 2018, the cover story of Forbes declared Smith was the wealthiest African American, surpassing Oprah Winfrey. Now, yeah, I seen something somebody put out there that the people were talking to Oprah and said, "Well, you would do what you." She got mad, right? She getting mad. See, somebody outdid her. No, she wanted, you get a car. You get a car. You got tax money to pay for the car? Now you don't get no car. Huh? What about that part? You can't get a car. You know how you ever watched back in the day watching the Price is Right and motherfucker went in the car? Well, if your ass ain't got money to pay the taxes, you get in the car, but don't you still got to pay the taxes on it? Well, you can't pay the taxes, right? So you get a car. You get a car. You get a car. But if you can't pay the taxes, you ain't got no car. So anyway, we see that this commencement here at Morehouse, HBCU, right? We had some of our prominent people who led in black organizations and activists come from Morehouse, Martin Luther King being one, right, and so forth, and many others down the line. And we see that this brother has said to get 8 generations of his family who probably are educators, right? And he said, now, I am a billionaire. And he said, now, what would be better for a black person in this day and age who spent all this money to go to school, and a lot of you ain't spending, a lot of this just loans, right? Taking out all these exorbitant loans, got the diploma, but can't get no job. And coming due is your bill for your loan. So he done took that off the table, right? He done wiped all that off. So you coming out fresh. Now all you got to do is focus on trying to get into profession or create the business of your PhD or whatever it is, your doctorate, whatever it is that you got, right? Commendable in so many forms of fashion. Now, some people might say, well, he might be doing this a tax, right? A tax season already passed, right? So unless he late on his taxes, that won't do him no good. So maybe for next year, okay. Even if that being said, but it's commendable that he would do something like that. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about black people looking out for black folks. You got the money, why not invest? That was an investment right there. Because he said, what I'm doing for y'all, you're going to do the same thing for somebody else when it's your turn. When you understand? It's a reciprocal on that, right? You're going to do what I did for you. So that's what we're going to try to come up and bring up by doing it. Commendable. Now, again, how that all fruition is only time will tell. But we have to give our hats off to that brother for doing what he did. And here's the Black Minds News over here. We did give you that shout out on that. And again, like I said, this brother here did something commendable, using his money in a way to invest in his peoples. Okay? Now, what I got up in here? Let's see what else going up in here. All right, I got some more stuff in here. We're gonna get to the down there. Okay, matter of fact, we still on the same theme about this education, right? Let me show you something again. When it comes to educating, right? So we're gonna see. And again, somebody might be in here sitting on their hand. You know what you got to do. You know what you got to do. You got to at least let me hold something, right? You can't just sit up in here and not let the brother hold. And I'm working in here, right? I don't ask for much. I'm asking for you to do. And I can't even do that, can I? Let's see. Try this one. Try this out. Check this out and be right back, right? And then go to the next clip. Check this out.
Ahead of his trial. The mother of Treyvon Martin, the black teenager killed in a shooting in 2012, is running for office in Florida. In a statement, Sabrina Fulton announced Saturday that she'll run for a seat on the Miami-Dade County Commission. Since her son's death, Fulton has become an outspoken anti-gun violence activist and created a nonprofit organization in his name. Treyvon Martin was killed when he was 17 years old. He was shot by a Neighborhood Watch volunteer who was acquitted after claiming it was self-defense. You might recall Martin's death sparked the...
Sabrina Fulton, mother of Treyvon Martin, is running for Miami-Dade County Commission. You know I'm going to say that again. Sabrina Fulton, mother of Treyvon Martin, is running for Miami-Dade County Commission. This story was done May the 19th, 2019, coming from The Roots. And this is how it reads. Sabrina Fulton, mother of Trayvon Martin, the unarmed black teen who was gunned down by a racist coward, George Zimmerman, in Florida in 2012, and is running for office in Miami-Dade County. Fulton confirmed Saturday that she'll be putting her name in for a chance at a spot on the county commission. Since 2012, I have advocated tirelessly to empower our communities and make them safer, she told Miami Herald, but the work is not done. I am proud to announce that I will run to represent District 1 on the county commission. The county must continue moving forward so our families are safe from violence, can afford to live in Miami-Dade, and have access to good paying jobs, she continued. I am ready to take on these issues and many others in county government. Fulton will be running against the Miami-Dade Mayor, Carlos Jimenez, for the seat, which is being vacated by Commissioner Barbara Jordan in 2020. Since the tragic death of her son, Trayvon Martin, in 2012, Sabrina Fulton has evolved into an mother of Trayvon Martin receives honorary doctorate from Benedict College. You know I'm going to say that again. Mother of Trayvon Martin receives honorary doctorate from Benedict College. This story was done December the 24th, 2018. Looks like this is coming from the Root as well. And this is how this reads. Since the tragic death of her son, Trayvon Martin, in 2012, Sabrina Fulton has evolved into an unwavering force against racial inequalities. As such, she's been rewarded for her commitment to social justice. According to WIS News, after delivering the commencement address at Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, she was presented with an honorary Doctor of Human Letters degree and a key to the city by Mayor Steve Benjamin. It was an honor to meet Sabrina Fulton this morning and present her with the key to the city of Columbia for all the amazing social justice advocacy work she does. City Councilwoman Tamika Isaac Devine wrote on Twitter. Fulton took her own Instagram account to share her accomplishment with her 26,000 followers. Fulton came into national prominence shortly after the death of her son in February of 2012 and quickly became a fierce voice against racism and Florida's Stand Your Ground law that allowed her son's murderer to walk away free. Her 17-year-old death sparked the Black Lives Matter movement and furthered the ongoing national discussion on structural racism, inherent biases, and violence towards black people. She has since appeared on numerous network TV shows, speaking out for civil rights, campaigned for Hillary Clinton in 2016, co-written a book, and helped form the Trayvon Martin Foundation. The foundation has launched initiatives to empower families and communities through violence prevention, mental health access and awareness, and educating the community's children. The foundation says and is a standing testament to her son's legacy. All right, so we're back. So we see that Trayvon's mother, Sabrina Fulton, right? Everybody know about Trayvon Martin. It was one of those cases that, again, that affected a lot of us. We've seen what took place, and we've seen how the Just Us system, once again, tried a dead man versus looking at what the evidence is. And again, for those who didn't know, I actually solved the case, right? Or I won't say I solved the case. When I say I solved, remember they said there was a mystery 6 minutes. So 3 minutes or 6 minutes. Remember, there's a mystery, right? Hey, go back and look at my video. Again, they made sure that video didn't get out. It got suppressed so bad to the fact it got a couple views and they hid it and buried it, right? But I showed you how there was the mystery, because what it is, when George Zimmerman made that call, you got to remember when Trayvon came through the pathway, he was outside of the pool area, coming from wherever he was coming from, Zimmerman. And he seen him, and he trailed him from that part all the way up to the pool, and then he pulled in. Remember, he pulled in, and then remember, he was on the phone saying that he's walking past me. Okay? Then he backed out and trailed him again. That's when Trayvon started to run, right? But what the thing is, they started from that point. They started the clock from that point. They didn't start to show you that he had been trailing them long before that. See? That was the mystery. That's why remember they in the courtroom they was making it silence. And he was just sitting there like, well, how come he could have just ran home by then? But you're not telling the truth. You didn't tell it. It started from there. See? That's how they do. So we see that based on all that transpired through that whole case back in 2012, we see that the mother has taken again the cause of what had transpired and happened to her son and still advocating on behalf of him and got a doctorate degree, right? Honorary doctorate, right? From South Carolina, right? And she's taking that now and said she's going to get into the politics of Miami-Dade, right? You know, a lot of stuff be happening over in that Florida and that Miami-Dade, because again, a lot of that is plantation, right? So she's putting her name for a chance in the spot of the county commission, right? Which is a good thing, commendable thing for her to be doing. And we see that since 2012, she has advocated tirelessly, right, to empower their communities and make them safer. The only thing, now that's not about what she just said, I'm just saying making our community safer. The only problem we be having is we have people, again, let's go back to the story I talked about with the Zaire Atkinson, right? When people who don't have, let's just take the theme that I gave so far, because again, the way I will do my shows is a theme to it. We're gonna get to what it's about. I'm just leading you up till I get to where I'm going. All right, so you see that with the Zaire Atkins being accosted by a police officer, again, somehow he don't have the cognition to understand where he's at and not understand rationale that I'm on university campus. He's showing the ID. All right, let me go on about my long here. He couldn't do that. So there was, again, he got an itch for a scratch. There's something he can't deal with, right? So it looks like a lot of our problem, besides the black on black aspect, again, we're going to show why that is. Oh, we're going to get to that. Oh, today's show is going to be one of them shows, right? It's going to be that show. If you stay for this show here, this going to be the show here. Oh, all right. So anyway, now, so our problem is when we being accosted by people who profession, they got to punch a clock to come into my environment, right? So before you even become a cop or you are long bloodlines of cop, you hear a lot of stories. You don't hear a lot of fantasies. Matter of fact, you know how they were saying niggas is like birth gorillas is because white man went and seen in the jungle and seen a gorilla, and the motherfucker equated that a black person had to produce a damn gorilla, and then took that shit and went up in the air in Europe and started telling everybody, niggas is producing gorillas. See, that's where they get that shit from. You understand? So they come with these fantasy lie-ass shit, and then that becomes some kind of stereotype, right? So again, is that some or all? It's not all. It's not all. We're going to have some bad, grapes and shit in the damn bunch. That's any nation we could pull them out, right? So, but if you coming in an environment that one already, you got a fear for one, that just on historical aspect about maybe not you per se, but as a collective of a nation, what has been done to black people. And so you're down there to supposedly tame and keep the animals from spilling over to yours. So when you always in accosting them, you already in a kill mode. Till you run across one that's rationalized, that messes your whole program, and that's what be happening to them. When you come with them and you start saying things and it starts to make sense to them and logical, it fucks them up because they like, wait a minute, you're not supposed to make sense. You're supposed to be incoherent and, your English is, now again, see, I can read and speak, but I don't have to do all that treble in my shit. Do you understand what I mean by that? A lot of people, when they think education, I ain't got to say Mr. Blows your mind. No, I can still speak in my own tonnage of what I was born in, and still you understand exactly what I'm saying. See? I don't have to turn it down. This is just who I am. Why is it threatening to you? But see, you in my environment. So that means you got to come with a more tougher and thicker skin and approach and have to have understanding. But you don't. So you come in there with these kind of things, and so y'all come in and y'all doing all kinds of stuff. So our problem is because we have people who would be kind of say invaders in the community, and then have stereotypes, and then when they dealing with you in the worst way. Now, that's not all, but that's more than some, right? And so Treyvon, in a situation, then he had that kind of dude. He got this motherfucker who playing, he a damn neighborhood watch motherfucker, right? He neighborhood watch ass motherfucker playing cop. They want to cry and talk about, see, but if you knew he trailed them that long, when he got his ass out the car again, and ran after him, you'd be like, well, damn, why you doing all this? You doing too much. That's not within the protocols or whatever the hell you call yourself is. But they made sure not for that to be heard. So here it is. You acting as if he in the wrong. My man in where he supposed to be in everything. But see, that's how it be. You be in our environments. And yet we trespassing in our own damn environment. That would be our problems. Right? Our problem is based on that. So we see that the mother has took up the baton after she done lost her son. So she got an honorary doctor. She going to go ahead and try to get into this politics. Right? And thinking that maybe this could make some changes. But again, the eradication is not to put some, it's to get this. It has to all be destroyed and rewritten. That's just the bottom line. We got to be honest with that. You try to uphold this Constitution. When they wrote the Constitution, majority of us, again, you BADOS and ADOS, we were in a position of servitude, of slave. I ain't gonna say servitude. That's white folks. We were slaves, right? We were slaves in this. So when it was written, it only can add you in. So that means that it still is a part in my mind. I could play tricks with you. See, if you tear it down and rewrite it when we all starting at the same, then we ain't no fluff. There's no fluff in it. It's all what it is. But see, you playing in the fluff area. So we see she's going to try to go ahead and do that, right? And she's going to use the platform about everybody should know who she is based on the simple of her son. So that may help her catapult and get herself in a position. Those in Miami-Dade, if you should be happy to hear me by some choice, because again, I am the most hated show in the black corner, and they're going to have me in the damn corner where nobody going to hear me other than you here right now, and maybe a few hundred, maybe the 100, and after that, they're going to go no past 100, but they're going to tell me, it's going to tell me just what they call it, what they call that damn shit, the thing that reads the whole shit and say, well, you think it picks you out? No, you picking me out. No, it's not. It's you doing it. But they ain't going to admit that. But anyway, that's what it is, right? So we see that she's trying to take the baton and do something good with it. And again, over here in Black Minds TV, we're going to give you a little bit of shine over here on that for the simple fact that you got to do what you got to do. Because why? They're not going to do it for you, right? They're not going to do it for you. Now, we finna get to the nits and gritty here, right? Well, this where it's finna get good, y'all. All right. This is where it's finna get good at. Because now this is where the lessons come in at. The theme is being kind of set, but now I got to give you some of the facts to it. Check this out. All right, let's see. I'm going to start off with this. Let's start this one first. And let's see. Should I go boom, boom, boom? Yeah, I'm going to go boom, 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 and then I'm going to come with that one. Then I'm going to go, hold on. Let me do this. Then I'm going to do this. Then to take a break on that one and come in there. All right, come on. Check this out. Be right back. Did the CIA play a role in the crack epidemic of the 1980s in Los Angeles? You know I'm going to say that again. Did the CIA play a role in the crack epidemic of the 1980s in Los Angeles? This story was done back in October 14, 2018. Coming from, it looks like it says the citizentruth.org. This says, an explosive report from a relative unknown journalist, Gary Webb, claims the CIA helped foster the crack epidemic that ravaged Los Angeles in the 1980s. In 1996, a bombshell report by journalist Gary Webb claimed that the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, supported cocaine trafficking into the United States by Nicaragua Contra Rebels organization. The United States support was an effort to destabilize the left-wing Nicaraguan government, which the United States viewed as a threat. The report claims that trafficking led to the crack epidemic in Los Angeles in the 1980s. Gary Webb wrote the three-part expose called Dark Alliance for the San Jose Mercury News in California in August of 1996. Webb had anonymous sources. He eventually named one in a later book who had been involved in the Nicaragua drug ring to back his allegations up. Some of Webb's sources would later speak out in the 2015 documentary called Freeway Crack in the System, which was about Rick Freeway Ross, who created a crack empire in the 1980s. Ross was a central character in Webb's Dark Alliance allegations. According to Webb, in the 1980s, when the CIA exerted a certain level of control over Contra groups such as the Nicaragua Democratic Force, the agency, as well as the United Drug Enforcement Administration, granted amnesty to and financially backed important Contra supporters and fundraisers who were known to the United States government as cocaine smugglers. The Contras were United States-supported right-wing rebel groups, active by 1979 to the early 1990s in opposition to the socialist Sandinista juntas of National Reconstruction Government in Nicaragua. United States Justice Department and its agencies, who were aware of the Contra-linked drug trafficking operations of the FDN supporters, allegedly thwarted local police investigation and blocked the prosecution of the Contra-linked cocaine traffickers. Gary Webb's claim in Dark Alliance reports were bold. For the better part of a decade, a San Francisco Bay Area drug ring sold tons of cocaine to the Crips and Blood street gangs of Los Angeles and funded millions in drug profits to a Latin American guerrilla army run by the United States Central Intelligence Agency, Mercury News investigation has found. This drug network opened the first pipeline between Colombia cocaine cartels and the black neighborhoods of Los Angeles, city now known as the crack capital of the world. The cocaine that flooded in helped spark a crack explosion in urban America and provided the cash and connection needed for LA gangs to buy automatic weapons. Thousands of young black men are serving long prison sentences for selling cocaine, a drug that was virtually unobtainable in black neighborhoods before members of the CIA Army started bringing it into South Central in the 1980s at bargain basement prices. The explosive allegation erased the community most affected by the crack epidemic here in the United States. In October 1996, 2 months after the publication of Webb's articles, a Boston Globe reporter wrote that the story was pulsing through LA's black neighborhoods like a shockwave, provoking a stunning growing level of anger and indignation. Talk radio stations with predominantly black audiences are deluded with calls on the subject. Demonstrations, candle lighting ceremonies, and town hall meetings are becoming regular affairs, and people on the streets are heatedly discussing the topic. Webb would publish a book based on his articles 2 years later entitled Dark Alliance, the CIA, the Contras, and the Crack Cocaine Explosion. The book won a Penn Oakland Censorship Award and a Firecracker Alternative Book Award. Given the high-profile subject and its incendiary matters, many observers dismiss Webb report as conspiracy theory too. The media turns on Gary Webb. Eventually, the media would mostly turn against Webb, attempting to discredit him. Notably, the New York Times, Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times ran articles calling his allegations unfounded. The Mercury News, who originally stood by Webb's reporting, complied with these news denunciations and published an apology for the series in May of 1997. This came at the price of Webb's career and ultimately his life. On December 10, 2004, the journalist was found dead in his apartment with a 2.38 caliber bullets to the head from apparent suicide. 2 years later, Gary Webb's own story would become the subject of a biography written by an award-winning investigative journalist, Nick Soch, who also worked as a consultant on the 2014 film of the same name, Kills the Messenger. The film was a depiction of Webb's life starring Jeremy Renner. Perhaps the extreme backlash Webb faced was inevitable since he was taking on such a large and powerful entity as the CIA. It was acknowledged that Webb did not state outright that the CIA ran the drug trade or even knew about it. However, the implications were deemed clear, and this was dangerous to the public image of the agency. Webb would later say that he did contact the CIA during his research, but the agency would not return his calls, along with no mention of this in his Dark Alliance series. Many thought he refused to contact the CIA, which undermined his credibility in the eyes of other reporters. Allegedly, the CIA did not have to do much to unravel the journalist's reputation. Afterwards, the controversy surrounding Webb's work proved enough for his fellow journalists and media outlets to attack him. Into a 2013 interview, reporter Jesse Katz recounted with remorse, as an LA Times reporter, we saw this series in the San Jose Mercury News and kind of wondered how legit it was and kind of put it under a microscope. We did it in a way that most of us who were involved in it, I think, would look back on that and say it was overkill. We had this huge team of people at the LA Times and kind of piled on to one muckraker up in Northern California. Was Gary Webb wrong? According to The Intercept, Nicholas Dujmovic, a CIA detective of the intelligence staffer who wrote internal report on Webb's series, pointed out that much of what was reported in Dark Alliance was in fact not new. As early as 1985, Associated Press journalists Robert Perry and Brian Barger found that the Contras group had engaged in cocaine trafficking parts to help finance their war against Nicaragua. Special Senate subcommittee chaired by the Senator John Kerry investigated AP's finding and in 1989 released a 1,166-page report to convert U.S. operations throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. It found considerable evidence that the Contras were linked to the running drugs and guns and that the United States government knew about it, the report said, or stated. On the basis of this evidence, it is clear that the individuals who provided support for the Contras were involved in drug trafficking. The supply network of the Contras was used by drug trafficking organizations, and elements of the Contras themselves not only received financial and material assistance from drug traffickers. In each case, one or another agency of the United States government had information regarding involvement either while it was occurring or immediately thereafter. Curiously, this remained largely unnoticed by the media until Gary Webb picked up the story later year in 1996 and linked it to the CIA. In a related affair, in 1993, Robert Bonner, the head of the Drug Enforcement Agency, said on CBS News 60 Minutes, the Venezuelan National Guard smuggled cocaine into the United States in cooperation with the CIA. However, when Webb's report came out 3 years later, the accusation seems to have been forgotten. But there are those who still believe Webb's reporting got it wrong. As recently as 2014, Jeff Lean, an assistant managing editor for the major investigation for the Washington Post, wrote an article titled "Gary Webb Was No Journalism Hero, Despite That Kill the Messenger Says." Lean alleged that Webb's report was overblown and his claims were insufficiently substantiated. Lean referenced a 1998 report by CIA Inspector General Frederick Hitz, evidence that the CIA was not involved in drug trafficking. However, Hitz's report echoes the Senate subcommittee findings that while the CIA did not conspire to bring drugs into the United States, but it did not cut off the ties to individuals alleged to be involved in the trafficking drug trade, in trafficking drugs. Sorry about that. His report stated, as I said earlier, we have found no evidence in the course of this lengthy investigation of any conspiracy by CIA or its employees to bring drugs into the United States. However, during the Contra era, CIA worked with a variety of people to support the Contra program. These include CIA assets, pilots who ferried supplies to the Contras, as well as Contra officials and others. Let me be frank about what we are finding. There are instances where CIA did not, and in expeditious or consistent fashion, cut off the relationship with individuals supporting the Contra program who were alleged to have engaged in drug trafficking activities or take actions to resolve the allegations. Some say Webb's downfall was linking the cocaine to the socioeconomic effects of drugs on the black community in Los Angeles. Some interpret the connection as part of a CIA conspiracy to purposely target the black community, an allegation Webb denies he ever made. I never believed and never wrote that there was a grand CIA conspiracy behind the crack plague. Gary Webb wrote in his book, the CIA couldn't even mine a harbor without getting its trench coat stuck in its fly. Webb biographer would eventually state that perhaps this was the main legacy that the late journalist ultimately paid the price for. He documented for the first time in his history of the United States media how CIA complicity with Central America drug traffickers had actually impacted the sale of drugs north of the border in a very detailed, accurate story, and that's, I think, the takeaways here. The secret meeting that changed rap music and destroyed a generation. You know I'm going to say that again. The secret meeting that changed rap music and destroyed a generation. This story was done back in April 24th of 2012, coming from Where Hip Hop Is Read. And this is how this reads. This anonymous letter landed in my inbox about a minute ago. Hello. After more than 20 years, I finally decided to tell the world what I witnessed in 1991, which I believe was one of the biggest turning points in popular music and ultimately American society. I have struggled for a long time weighing the pros and cons of making this story public, as I was reluctant to implicate the individuals who were present that day. So I simply decided to leave out names and all the details that may risk my personal well-being and that of those who were like me, dragged into something they weren't ready for. Between the late 80s and early 90s, I was what you called a decision maker with one of the more established companies in the music industry. I came from Europe in the early 80s and quickly established myself in the business. The industry was different back then, since technology and media weren't accessible to people like they are today. The industry had more control over the public and had the means to influence them any way it wanted. This may explain why in early 1991, I was invited to attend a closed-door meeting with a small group of music business insiders to discuss rap music new direction. Little did I know that we would be asked to participate in one of the most unethical and destructive business practices I've ever seen. The meeting was held at a private residence on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I remember about 25 to 30 people being there, most of them familiar faces. Speaking to those I knew, we joked about the theme of the meeting, as many of us did not care for rap music and failed to see the purpose of being invited to a private gathering to discuss its future. Among the attendees was a small group of unfamiliar faces who stayed to themselves and made no attempt to socialize beyond their circle. Based on their behavior and the formal appearances, they didn't seem to be in our industry. Our casual chatter was interrupted when we were asked to sign a confidentiality agreement, preventing us from publicly discussing the information presented during the meeting. Needless to say, this intrigued and in some cases disturbed many of us. The agreement was only a page long, but very clear on the matter and consequences, which stated that violating the terms would result in job termination. We asked several people what this meeting was about and the reason for such secrecy, but couldn't find anyone who had answers for us. Few people refused to sign and walked out. No one stopped them. I was tempted to follow, but curiosity got the best of me. A man who was part of the unfamiliar group collected the agreements from us. Quickly after the meeting began, one of my industry colleagues, who shall remain nameless like everyone else, thanked us for attending. He then gave the floor to a man who only introduced himself by the first name and gave no further details about his personal background. I think he was the owner of the residence, but it was never confirmed. He briefly praised all of us for the success we had achieved in our industry and congratulated us for being selected as part of this small group of decision makers. At this point, I began to feel slightly uncomfortable at the strangeness of this gathering. The subject quickly changed as the speakers went on to tell us that the respective companies we represent had invested in a very profitable industry, which could become even more rewarding with our active involvement. He explained that the companies we work for had invested millions into the building of privately owned prisons, and that our positions of influence in the music industry would actually impact the profitability of these investments. I remember many of us in the group immediately looking at each other in confusion. At the time, I didn't know what a private prison was, but I wasn't the only one. Sure enough, someone asked what these prisons were and what any of this had to do with us. We were told that these prisons were built by privately owned companies who receive funding from the government based on the number of inmates. The more inmates, the more money the government would pay these prisons. It was also made clear to us that since these prisons are privately owned, as they become publicly traded, we'd be able to buy shares. Most of us were taken back by this. Again, a couple of people asked what this had to do with us. At this point, my industry colleagues who had first opened the meeting took the floor again and answered our questions. He told us that since our employers had become silent investors in this prison business, it was now in their interest to make sure that these prisons remain filled. Our job would be to help make this happen by marketing music which promotes criminal behavior. Rap being the music of choice, he assured us that this would be a great situation for us because rap music was becoming an increasingly profitable market for our big companies. And as employees, we also be able to buy personal stocks in these prisons. Immediately silence came over the room. You could hear a pin drop. I remember looking around to make sure I wasn't dreaming and saw half of the people with dropped jaws. My daze was interrupted when someone shouted, "Is this a fucking joke?" At this point, things became chaotic. Two of the men who were part of the unfamiliar group grabbed the man who shouted out and attempted to remove him from the house. A few of us, myself included, tried to intervene. One of them pulled out a gun and we all backed off. They separated us from the crowd and all four of us were escorted outside. My industry colleagues who had opened the meeting earlier hurried out to meet us and remind us that we had signed agreement and would suffer the consequences of speaking about this publicly or even with those who attended the meeting. I asked him why he was involved with something this corrupt, and he replied that it was bigger than the music. Business and nothing we want to challenge without risking consequences. We all protested, and as he walked back into the house, I remember word for word the last thing he said, "It's out of my hands now. Remember, you signed an agreement." He then closed the door behind him. The men rushed us to our cars and actually watched until we drove off. A million things were going through my mind as I drove away, and I eventually decided to pull over and park on the side of the street in order to collect my thoughts. I replayed everything in my mind repeatedly, and it all seemed very surreal to me. I was angry with myself for not having taken a more active role in questioning what had been presented to us. I like to believe the shock of it all is what suspended my better nature. After what seemed like an eternity, I was able to calm myself enough to make it home. I didn't talk or call anyone that night. The next day, back at the office, I was visibly out of it, but blamed it on being under the weather. No one else in my department had been invited to the meeting, and I felt a sense of guilt for not being able to share what I had witnessed. I thought about contacting the three others who were kicked out of the house, but I didn't remember their names and thought that tracking them down would probably bring unwanted attention. I considered speaking out publicly at the risk of losing my job, but I realized I'd probably be jeopardizing more than my job, and I wasn't willing to risk anything happening to my family. I thought about those men with guns and wondered who they were. I had been told that this was bigger than the music business, and I could do was let my imagination run free. There were no answers and no one to talk to. I tried to do a little bit of research on private prisons, but didn't uncover anything. About the music business involvement, however, the information I did find confirmed how dangerous this prison business really was. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Eventually, it was as if the meeting had never taken place. It at all seemed surreal. I became more reclusive and stopped going to any industrial events unless professionally obligated to do so. On 2 occasions, I found myself attending the same function as my former colleagues. Both times our eyes met, but nothing more was exchanged. As the months passed, rap music had definitely changed directions. I was never a fan of it, but even I could tell the difference. Rap acts that talked about politics or harmless fun were quickly fading away as gangster rap started dominating the airwaves. Only a few months had passed since the meeting, but I suspect that the ideas presented that day had been successfully implemented. It was as if the order had been given to all major labor executives. The music was climbing the charts, and most companies were more than happy to capitalize on it. Each one was churning out their very own gangster rap acts on an assembly line. Everyone bought into it, consumers included. Violence and drugs use became a central theme in most rap music. I spoke to a few of my peers in the industry to get their opinions on the new trend, but was told repeatedly that it was all about supply and demand. Sadly, many of them even expressed that the music reinforced their prejudice of minorities. I officially quit the music business in 1993, but my heart had already left months before. I broke ties with the majority of my peers and removed myself from this thing I had once loved. I took some time off, returned to Europe for a few years, settled out of state, and lived a quiet life away from the world of entertainment. As the years passed, I managed to keep my secret, fearful of sharing it with the wrong person, but also a little ashamed of not having had the balls to blow the whistle. But as rap got worse, my guilt grew fortunately. In the late 90s, having the internet as a resource which wasn't at my disposal in the early days made it easier for me to investigate what is now labeled the prison industrial complex. Now that I have a greater understanding of how private prisons operates, things make much more sense than they ever have. I see how the criminalization of rap music played a big part in promoting racial stereotypes and misguided so many impressionable young minds into adopting these glorified criminal behaviors, which often leads to incarceration. 20 years of guilt is a heavy load to carry, but the least I can do now is to share my story, hoping that fans of rap music realize how they've been used for the past 2 decades. Although I plan on remaining anonymous for obvious reasons, my goal now is to get this information out as to many people as possible. Please help me spread the word. Hopefully others who attended the meeting back in 91 will be inspired by this and tell their own stories. Most importantly, if only one life has been touched by my story, I pray it makes the weight of my guilt a little more tolerable. Thank you. All right, let me say to the spam in the house, we got Sharon Washington, peace to you, sister. And Abdul Kabir Bey, what's good, my brother, one love as well. Glad I know I've been gone. No, I don't be trying to be gone, y'all, but it be happening. But I'm glad to see y'all here. Now, again, I'm laying down the foundation here, right? First, it gave me about, again, they said, did the CIA play a role in bringing the crack cocaine to the United States? Then you have the secret meeting that was taking place with hip-hop. Huh? You know, black people, they say always the most, we all think of conspiracy, right? We always think of somebody after us. Somebody always, and then you have some of our people when we start to lay things down, it's not like you're just making stuff up. Wait a minute, I'm laying it down. See, the thing about hindsight, right? We can look back and we can pull up from the back and put it together, put the piece together and say, oh, okay. The reason why I'm doing this, and I'm not going to elaborate on that because I got to show you other stuff, but I'm laying down the foundation. Now, you remember the crack cocaine, those who was around. This is the 80s, right? The 80s coming around. Crack cocaine gives it to the community and just wildfire. You got those who making the money, those who getting hooked on it. All that stuff was coming in the 80s, right? Right? Then you got 91 coming. They got a meeting about hip-hop. Now, crack, it starts in California. Hip-hop, gangsterism going to start in California too, right? All right, so let's look at this here, right? Remember this? Did y'all hear this? Let me play it again just in case you didn't. Check it out. Now listen again. I'm putting the pieces together. Understand what I'm doing here. I'm put the pieces together right before your eyes. I ain't going to elaborate on everything yet. I'm going to let it all lay out first. Check it out. Be right back.
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents, It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said, rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, there's the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate. But there is a consensus, and I will cease. A, we must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malfactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior. That's why we do in this bill. We have drug treatment and we have other treatments to try to deal with it. But they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist. And we must deal with that.
Right? And that was the speech done in 93, right? That was the drug crime laying down for that, the drug crime, right? That's back in the news again, right? I'm laying the foundation, right? You got what they said about how crack, right? Possibility of the CIA, right? Then they talk about the meeting that took place in hip hop. I don't care, even though we know what we done. I don't care. I know what we done. I know what we've done, but I don't care. Because why? Let's see. So I got something up. I'm laying it down. I'm going to lay it down. I'm going to lay it down. I was going to lay it down. So check this out. Now we're going back to that time, 93, and let's look at it in retrospect. Check it out.
Near Orlando, Florida last night, authorities rushed a 30-year-old shooting victim to the hospital. Today, they're making arrests for his murder. Black leaders are calling such violence America's #1 civil rights problem. But many said the answer is not in the crime bill's call for more police and prisons. Religious and political leaders agreed today to spend more time teaching respect for life and the dignity of others.
Is that going to stop the crime problem next year? The answer is no. But will it, in fact, put us on a course to bring about real and meaningful change on a long-term basis? The answer is yes.
22 years ago, the country divided over a controversial, far-fetching anti-crime bill brought to Congress by former President Bill Clinton. Critics blame the law for record-breaking incarceration rates and with further devastating poor communities. Well, just last week, President Clinton, as you know, was interrupted by Black Lives Matter protesters upset about the 1994 crime law. Though the president admitted a year ago that the law jailed too many for too long while speaking at a convention for the NAACP. Clinton supported her husband in signing the law when she was First Lady. In recent days, the former Secretary of State has been trying to clarify her husband's remarks on the law without trying to denounce them. Now, Bernie Sanders, along with 187 Democrats, voted for the bill in 1994, and he is now criticizing President Clinton, saying that he needed to apologize to the American people. Joining me now is Congressman Bobby Rush, who voted in favor of the crime bill in 1994. He has endorsed Hillary Clinton. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Cameron, it's my pleasure.
It always is great to talk to you. Let's put some perspective on what was happening. You were there 22 years ago. Do you believe the way the crime bill is being described now versus what was happening on the ground in some of that video, is it matching here?
Chairman, let me start out with this. I am ashamed of my vote. I sincerely apologize to my God, apologize to my community, to my family. That was the worst vote, as I look back over the years, that I've taken since I've been in the Congress. It was a vote that really was accompanied with a lot of hope that we will finally be able to deal with not only the issue of crime in our community, devastating crime, but that we will also be able to do those things and have those programs and policies to deal with the other kinds of issues, the other problems in our community. And what happened with the crime bill and its implementation was that there was too much of a focus, too many resources on locking them up, but no resources on love and compassion. And as a result, we have devastated our communities, devastated our families, devastated our futures. And you can compare what happened with the crime bill and with the reaction. Well, let me just say this. Crack cocaine and the crime bill were the two worst issues, problems, catastrophes that the black community has suffered through in the last 50 years. I absolutely apologize for voting for that bill. I repudiate not the spirit, but the details of that bill. We have not accomplished anything other than further destruction of our communities.
So, Congressman, I then have to ask you, as you have mothers and fathers, I covered crime and reported in Chicago for 10 years. Having the former president hearing what you say now with this apology, is it enough, though? We were looking at a law that allowed for the prosecution of children 13 or older for certain crimes to prosecute them as an adult. There's no one who would doubt the sincerity of the apology you just presented. But on the campaign trail, you seem to hear the Clintons having it both ways, apologizing for the crime bill, but then pointing to some of the good, if that is even the word to use, that may have come out of it. Is that enough for the black community to hear an apology, sir?
No. And since that time, in terms of my own personal activities, I have remained consistent in terms of trying to implement programs, laws and other programs that will really address the problem, the comprehensive, the overall problem that we are confronted with in the African American community, led primarily by jobs and economic development, the creation of small businesses. Also, schools are still suffering, housing and decent housing in our communities. So, I mean, we have to look at the comprehensive approach. And the problem with the crime bill and its implementation was that it was singularly focused. It was focused on locking them up, keeping them in jail. And there was, as you remember, there was a serious, very serious problem in terms of crime. It was this epidemic of crime in its beginning as a result of the crack cocaine drug wars and drug-related violence. It created a type of violence in our community that we had never witnessed before. We had never witnessed.
And it was also part, and Congressman, it was also a part, though, of a conversation involving the Rockefeller drug laws that had been passed in the Reagan years. So there was a trifecta of crime fighting that disproportionately affected the poorest of communities. You're in Chicago. Crime is still high. It is, in many ways, some believe proof that the war on drugs and some of these anecdotal things that we get behind as slogans don't work, and it is ultimately jobs. With that said, you've endorsed Hillary Clinton. As pointed out, Bernie Sanders also supported this crime law here. Is there something more that we should hear from the Clintons? Hillary Clinton, even though she was first lady, she supported it. Bernie Sanders says the use of so-called super predators, in his words, we know what they meant by that, or what she meant by that. Does Hillary Clinton need to do more to mend this rift?
Of course,
what do you believe she should do then, sir?
Job creation, the creation of a strong economy in the African American community, investment in the African American community would be a great beginning for Hillary Clinton. It would be a great beginning for Bernie Sanders if he were to be elected. I've endorsed Hillary Clinton, and I fully expect Hillary Clinton to reverse the outcomes, the horrendous outcomes that have befell the black community, the African American community, the urban community since the passage of the crime bill. I want her to not just repudiate it in words, but repudiate it in programs, in resources. We have to bring more resources into the black community. And between Hillary and Bernie, I just think that Hillary is more conditioned, more apt, and recognize the issue a lot more deeper than Bernie Sanders is right now. So I'm just, but I can only tell you, don't judge me by my head, judge me by my heart. And my heart tells me, speaks loudly and clearly, that bill that was enacted, that law, the crime bill, was absolutely horrendous, catastrophic to my community. The community that I love, the community that I've dedicated my entire life, made tremendous sacrifices for the benefit of that community. And I must repeat, not only am I apologizing for it, but I'm ashamed of it.
All right. I cut it. There's more to that. There's a lot more to that, right? Yeah. See? What they say, lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. Yeah, Kabir, you right, brother. Yeah. Used to be a Panther, right? But again, sometimes, when I look at a lot of this paper shuffling and when they do legislation is a lot of times these cats is not really reading what they yay and nay. They trust, them partners, right? They so-called constituents, right? They trust them. So, man could play the saxophone, smoke the weed, but he didn't inhale. You understand? Right? But remember we heard Joe Biden say what he said. What was you present? Did you hear that speech? He didn't care? Or was it the fact that, again, see, now we're looking in hindsight. So that's why you have to be a little bit not as judgmental. Because you got to remember, like, let's say those who are a little bit younger who might be hearing me, there was a day and time when we didn't have the access to be able to do what the research we do now. That's why people of certain generations who know certain things, they can go back and look. And as you see what I'm doing, I'm putting it out for you to see. See, in the days when we was out here, it was only theory, conjecture, as we know, but we didn't, we couldn't put it together. But I just gave you something. I showed you they said, well, they was questioning whether the government had something to do with crack, right? We don't know how brothers who, again, with this worse education system and public school system, knew chemistry so well how to put crack together. Who taught you that? How you know that, right? Now, I'm not saying there ain't some brothers, again, like I said, this just depends. But I'm just saying, you knew how to do that, cook that so well, and put all that skill and all that, right? So that scene to me already told me that this came from some sophistication. And it was like, rain down on me. That's all, rain down on me, right? Rain down on you, right? And it came down like candy, sweet. Everybody was lucrative, huh? A lot of people who in his 90s, why you so materialistic is because your parents and you came up out them 90s when it was the get money era. Only one who was flipping, selling, had on the latest Jordans, had all the gear, name brand, had it all. Herringbone, you name it, driving this, had it. Because why? Everybody was getting paid. And it was pushing. Either you was selling or you was using it. So that was that crack and that money that came in. But again, what was crack? What is the chemical? What was the long-lasting effects of it? They did not know. Until we start seeing women toe off like that, tricking life like that. Dudes get to the point like what was that scene in what was Old Dog when dude said for a cheeseburger, man, ow. I ain't gotta say it right. Ow. Right? It got that bad, right? So we see the implication of how that crack came in, right? And then that was in the 80s and going from the middle 80s, going up into the 90s, right? Those who know of that time, hip hop at that time had a conscious element to it. It was conscious in that part. It wasn't that shit. It was conscious that was running it. Then all of a sudden it turned. In them 90s, it turned. And so we find a letter that says the secret meeting in hip hop. And it was to infiltrate the music to produce the outcomes that would be lucrative to those who were investing in the private prisons. And then we see a couple years later, we see a mug talking about the crime bill. We don't think that nobody was sitting down putting this together, or this is just a figment of our imagination, or was this conspiratorial into fruition? That now that Bobby Rush can look back in hindsight and say, oh my God, yes, he tricked all y'all. Dude in the Kwame, right? He was saying, well, if it's gonna lock up them and, wait a minute, see, you could not see, that's what I'm saying, you couldn't see all the corners in it. Y'all was seeing that, yes, there was a lot of killing due to the simple fact when enough elbow room. Everybody was in all these entrepreneurs. Not enough room. I got to make room so that I can make some money. So a lot of people getting killed, right? So, but look at the design of it. And then here's this mug saying, I don't care if we created it. I don't care if we the ones, but I just want to make sure they're not piping my mama. They're not killing my daughter. They're not fighting my sons. We're going to deal with them when they locked up. Long as they lock the fuck up and away from society, away from us, we don't care if they've been deprived. We don't care if we are the cause and effects. You understand? So that's where we are at this point in time. And so you get some odd people looking at ourselves. When you look in the mirror, you think black. When you look at yourself, no. You have been the science project by some people that won't admit that they done that to you. But they'll make you make around think you're sick by thinking that put it on yourself. And yet the evidence is all out now. See, the evidence is right there now. You can't hide now. This is the unfolding. This is the revelation. It's here now. See? And we don't even know what is done now. Later down the line, some of y'all going to be telling about the stuff and connect from that point to another point. I'm not going to go no, well, I only had about a couple more minutes. I had about less than a minute left of that. I guess I'll go ahead and play that last minute to go and finish it out. So let me go ahead and finish this last minute out of that. Because Bobby Rush is pleading, right? He knows that they got duped. And they are part of the cause and effect and got tricked in it and thinking at this time he was trying to, I guess he was going to say, support the candidacy for Hillary Clinton, thinking that Hillary is any different. Well, that's her husband. Matter of fact, don't they got the Clinton Foundation? Or is that Bill Clinton Foundation and then Hillary got her own? Or is it Clinton Foundation? They all together. Birds of the feather flock together. That's my husband. That's my wife. We down together. Matter of fact, that's why she couldn't win. I already knew he got impeached. A lot of people act like they don't even know he got impeached, right? He got impeached, right? So ain't no way they're going to let him get back up in there. So that's why I had already called and told y'all Trump was going to win. I told y'all that. Go back and look at that. I already told y'all that. Wasn't no guessing. I already knew what the game was. So they got tricked into it. And this cat today, that's right before our face, is saying he proud that, yeah, I did it. I constructed it, and I still stand on it. Well, let me finish this out, and then we're going to go to that. Hold on. Let me do this. See, let me go ahead and see. We ain't gonna tell you what we heard. We're gonna tell you what we know. All right, so let's go ahead and finish out what Bobby's saying. He got about a minute left. Let's go on and finish him out. Let him get his plead out from when he said this. Check it out.
I'm absolutely ashamed of it.
Congressman Bobby Rush, you've had a storied career. You are a legend in Chicago, and it is a powerful thing to hear you say the words that you've just uttered about that crime bill that impacted many lives, and as we saw in 1994, was debated then, it is debated now. But I thank you for your words today, and I thank you for coming on and doing what we don't often see in the political world, an admission of wrong as you see it today. So Congressman Bobby Rush, it's a great pleasure to have you on today, and thank you.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the video.
Video resurfaces of congressmen who voted for Biden 1994 crime bill almost in tears as he admits it was the worst thing to happen to the black community in 50 years. As Joe continues to stand by it. You know I'm going to say that again. Video resurfaces of congressmen who voted for Biden 1994 crime bill almost in tears as he admits it was the worst thing to happen to the black community in 50 years, as Joe continues to stand by it. Now, this story was done in the Daily Mail, May the 19th, 2019, and this is how it reads. As Joe Biden continues to defend his 1994 crime bill, a video has resurfaced of Rep. Bobby Rush calling it the worst thing to happen to black community in 50 years. The 1994 crime bill, which was drafted by Biden, has been a shadow on his campaign since he announced he was running for president last month. While former President Bill Clinton, who signed the bill into law when he was president, has walked back on his support in recent years, Biden has not wavered. The 1994 crime bill is the largest of its kind in the history of the United States. It provided for 100,000 new police officers as well as $9.7 billion in funding for prisons and $6.1 billion in funding for prevention programs. The bill included the now infamous 3 strikes mandatory life sentence for repeated offenders and offered billions of dollars for new prisons to states if they increased their percentage of convicted violent offenders and increased the percentage of the sentence they actually served. Within a decade, the United States prison population skyrocketed from 1,179,200 people to 2,015,300 people. I am ashamed of my vote, Rush said when he was asked about the bill in 2016. That was the worst vote as I look back over the years that I have taken since I've been in Congress. The Democratic congressman said the bill put too much of a focus and resources on locking people up and no resources on the love and compassion. As a result, we have devastated our communities, devastated our families, devastated our futures, he said. Crack cocaine and the crime bill were the 2 worst catastrophes that the black community has suffered through in the last 50 years. I absolutely apologize for voting for the bill. We have not accomplished anything other than further destruction of our communities. When Biden was told about Rush's comment and asked if he was ashamed of the bill, he didn't waver. Not at all, he said. In fact, I drafted the bill. Biden fought hard for the bill in 1994, making it clear he believed it was integral to protecting American society from those who were beyond the pale. We have no choice but to take them out of society, he said. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter whether or not they had no backgrounds that enabled them to become socialized into the fabrics of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother in the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So, I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the streets. That's number 1. And he remained passionate about the bill even as he was questioned on how it had impacted mass incarceration, particularly among minority communities during a campaign stop in New Hampshire on Tuesday. Folks, let's get something straight. 92 out of every 100 prisoners who ended up behind bars are in a state prison, not a federal prison, he replied. This idea that the crime bill generated mass incarceration, it did not generate mass incarceration. But in 1995, Biden himself admitted that states could be mandated to keep prisoners in jail for longer. We say we don't want mandates to the states from the federal government, but the House crime bill now mandates for them to get money for prisons. They have to keep every prisoner in jail like we do federally, 85% of the time for which they're sentenced. Right now, they're only kept in jail in the states an average of 41% of the time. I like the idea of keeping them in jail longer. I am the guy that wrote the bill requiring federal judges to keep people in jail 100% of the time for which they're sentenced. And in notable exceptions, only 85%, I am all for tougher enforcement. Clinton also noted back in 2015 that the 1994 crime bill ultimately set a trend for state law. That was overdone. We're wrong about that. That percentage of it, we were wrong about, he said. I signed a bill that made the problem worse, and I want to admit it. When Simone Sanders, a senior advisor on Biden's campaign, was questioned about the state incentive this week, she called them an overcorrection. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the crime bill was perfect, she said on CNN. There were some really great preventative things in it, and then there was an overcorrection. I think many people will tell you across the country, black folks included, that the reaction to what was happening in the early 90s was an overcorrection to a very real issue. But we are going to see some policies roll out from our campaign very soon. All right, so laying it all out, right? We're laying it out for you, right? So let's go back a little bit, right? I just kind of skimmed over, but again, I really gave it the CIA, again, what they say, false to the crack epidemic that ravaged Los Angeles. But it wasn't just Los Angeles that got ravaged by it. It was like all major chocolate cities of that time, right? Chicago, New York, you name it, it was there, right? And so, again, we see that the writer of the time that wrote the book, I read the book, Dark Alliance. He had worked for San Jose Mercury News in California. And he decided that he was going to write about what was taking place, right? And, they say they ended up making a documentary in 2015 called The Freeway Crack in the System, right? About Freeway Ricky Walson. A lot of people, I see a lot of people when I seen that was given a lot of, adulations and stuff for that. Again, I'll plead the fifth on this, right? Okay. So according to that, you see in 1980, you see that there was certain levels of control. Now check this out. Let me tell you something else too, right? Do you know that who was the governor of Arkansas during this time? You know who the governor was? Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas at that time, right? And so it was said that a lot of the clearance was for a lot of those planes that would end up distributing. They flew and came down and was landed in Arkansas, right? And there's, you read the books and stuff. There's certain people who say, but nobody never discredit what this individual ended up said. But again, they discredit Gary Webb, right? And then it's ironically that he ended up having 238 in his head, right? It said he's suicide, right? And we see that again that let's say it was the Sandinistas, right? That's who they was actually funding, to have them to, I guess it was a twofold cut. Well, we're gonna help you to, get in position because we want you in position. It's kind of like with Venezuela, right? You got Maduro and you got the other cat, right? And the United States got the cat they want, but the people voted this cat and they're like, no, that cat ain't gonna play games. He ain't gonna play the game with us. The cat we want is this dude, right? So what end up happening is what you see, right? You see the turmoil, chaos, and all kind of stuff going on, right? Same thing here, right? So what happens is you see people that's in positions, and then you see people rise into position because of the work they had already put in. See, so this has been a long, drawn out, covert operation where people got together somewhere and decided, right? And just the cocaine itself wasn't good enough. They needed something. Why did they call it crack? Think about that. Why did they call it crack? That's exactly what happened to us, didn't it? They cracked the shit out of our people, cracked the hell out of our nation, split us the hell up. Severed us in all kinds of different forms and fashions. Here we is, Humpty Dumpty, trying to put the pieces back together. All the king's men and all the kings couldn't put him back together again. Why? Once that's broke, that's it. You can't put that back. And giving jobs, as Bobby Rush was trying to plead with, it's not going to resolve that. The detriment to that is too long. Too many lives. Too many people been snuffed out. Too many people been harmed. You understand? So everybody want to say, well, y'all talk about reparations. We ain't got to talk about what our ancestors. We ain't talking about modernly. We ain't talking about the modern shit things been done to us. They ain't got to talk about, I'm never going to shit on my ancestors. I ain't going to shit on my ancestors. But so with all people who are always talking about something, hey, I'm so long, get over it. We can't get over that because you keep adding shit to it. Like you cooking something in the back, somebody keep coming in and put a little salt in there, put a little extra pepper. You're like, damn, then somebody tasting, putting shit up in your soup. Like, damn, you changing you adding shit all the time, right? So when are the culpability for the stuff that we know, we can see now? But see, this one said, no, we didn't do nothing wrong. And the other one said, well, the numbers were just off. The percentages was wrong. The percentages was wrong. Well, we got the letter that said in hip hop when they came together and said they were going to use the magic in the music to, glorify street life, selling, killing niggas. We still see that today. Due to what had transpired based on who this individual that said anonymous put that letter out back in 2012, 7 years ago. So we can see the pieces of what has been laid out. That is, we are the byproducts. So that's why we are the eighth wonders of the world. Because everybody conspire against us, and yet we still here. So if you don't believe the Creator ain't got his hand on the pulse, yes, casualties of war is going to happen. But at the end, we still going to be here, right? We going to still be here. You doing everything, but then see the power that you can't stop is the fact that you can't create, you can't control your biology. So that means you're going to have to come on the other side. Well, once the other side start recognizing what you need not be doing, I ain't got to spell that out to it. When you know what you need not be doing, are you saying look, I ain't the Creator. I'm not going to sit here and be pleading like Abraham talking about in Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, if there's 50, it would be unrighteous of you if 50 would be right. Well, there's not 50, he says. Well, okay, well, maybe there's 45. There's not 45. Well, maybe there's 40. There's not 40 of them. But, okay, it would be unrighteous of a God like you. Maybe there's 35. There's not 35 in there. Well, okay, it would be unthinkable it's 30 in there. It's not 30 in there. Huh? Oh, he pleaded all the way down. You better get them. You better get Lot and his daughters in there, and the wife in there. Them only motherfuckers in there. The rest of them motherfuckers, that's it. That's over with. Huh? You trying to plead with somebody? Let them be. Let them go. I can't keep. Damn, what is it gonna take? But you don't understand that. Motherfuckers know what they've been doing to us. It's laid out for you, and yet they will deny it with a straight ass face. What camaraderie you gonna have with a mother that all the time, huh? He conspired to get you all the motherfucking time. And if he's dealing with you, it's only in the beneficial way. That's the only way he's gonna benefit with you. Deal with you because he's benefiting from it. Other than that, he ain't got no use for you. So that ain't us doing nothing. That's just the way it is. And the Creator got to do it. Because look what they've been doing to us. So let me go on and move on. Here's what it is. Now, got two more left. Now I got to give you this here. Let me look and see who out here. Let me see some family out here talking some stuff out here. Let me see who all out here. Let's see. Okay, Leonard the Uter say he's an agent talking about of chaos. We're talking about Bobby. Bobby Hush. Not Rush, but Bobby Hush. This stage interview was pathetic. From Tamara's part, or you saying Bobby's part? Because it looked like Tamara's like, look, wait a minute. I was in Chicago for 10 years, and I know I was covering them stores. It was tore up. It was tore up. And you in Chicago. Matter of fact, a lot of people trying to figure out how you got out of the fact that you didn't catch what Fred Hampton and them catch, because you ended up running and hiding in the Jesse Jackson house. But don't quote me on that, right? So this is Biden's son. That's why Biden's son is a meth addict. Say, man, Leonard, you said Bobby Rush should just commit suicide. Well, I think he's being tormented. I think it ain't just him. At least he's willing to say it. There's a lot of them that's supposed to come out and be like, yeah, but they not gonna say it, right? They gonna act like no. At least he trying to say, look, I know my apology can't make no difference. You know what I'm saying? I didn't see it coming. They blinded me too. I was looking at something. I didn't look at the other hand. They did a magic trick on me. At least he willing to say it. Now again, it's up to the creator whether you forgive it or not. He trying. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Whether you believe it or not is another thing. But I'm just saying, at least he's saying it, right? Let's just say Joey the Shark. Okay. So let's get to the end part here. So what I got to give you now is this here. This the history. Right? This history right here is how you get this private prison industry. This go back to our ancestors, y'all. This was never nothing new. They only just reheat shit. That's why you have to be a person that studies history, because you'll know the patterns, and once you start seeing, say, oh, I've seen that before. Y'all pulled that back here. You understand? That's why you read history. So that your ass could be like seeing the patterns, and when it started to develop, I seen that. I did that before. You don't know what I'm talking about? All right, let me go ahead and get this right quick. Check this out, and be right back. I got this and one more after this, then we're going to call it a show for today. It is what it is. So go ahead and play this and be right back. Let's get it. The true history of America's private prison industry. You know I'm going to say that again. The true history of America's private prison industry. The story goes back September 28, 2018, September 25th, 2018. And this is how it reads. Before founding the Corrections Corporation of America, a $1.8 billion private prison corporation now known as CoreCivic, Terrell Don Hutto ran a cotton plantation the size of Manhattan. There, mostly black convicts were forced to pick cotton from dawn to dusk for no pay. It was in 1967, and the Beatles' All You Need Is Love was a hit. But the men in the fields sang songs with lyrics like, "Oh, master, don't you whip me, I'll give you a $50." Hutton's family lived on the plantation and even had a houseboy, an unpaid convict, who served them. At the time, most prisons in the South were plantations. In some states, certain inmates were given guns and even whips and empowered to torture those who didn't meet labor quotas. Hutto did such a good job in Texas that Arkansas would hire him to run their entire prison system, made entirely of plantations, which he would run at a profit to the state. His ability to run a prison that put money into state coffers would later attract the attentions of two businessmen was a new idea: to found a corporation that would run prisons and sell shares on the stock market. Prisons had been privatized before. Louisiana first privatized its penitentiary in 1844, just 9 years after it opened. The company Manhattan, Pratt & Ward ran it as a factory using inmates to produce cheap clothes for enslaved people. One prisoner wrote in his memoirs that as soon as the prisons was privatized, his jailers laid aside all objects of reformation and reinstated the most cruel tyranny to eke out the dollars and cents of human misery, much like CoreCivic's shareholders reports today. Louisiana's annual penitentiary report from the time give no information about the prison violence, rehabilitation efforts, or anything about security. Instead, they deal almost exclusively with the profitability of the prison. Like private prisons today, profits rather than rehabilitation was the guiding principle of early penitentiaries throughout the South. If a profit of several $1,000s can be made on the labor of 20 slaves, posited the Telegraph and Texas Register in the mid-19th centuries, Why may not a similar profit be made on the labor of 20 convicts? The head of a Texas jail suggests the state opened a penitentiary as an instrument of Southern industrialization, allowing the state to push against the overgrown monopolies of the North. 5 years after Texas opened its first penitentiary, it was the state's largest factory. It quickly became the main southern supplier of textile west of the Mississippi. Prison privatization accelerated after the Civil War. The reason for turning penitentiaries over to companies was similar to states' justification for using private prisons today. Prison populations were soaring and they couldn't afford to run their penitentiaries themselves. The 13th Amendment had abolished slavery except as punishment for a crime. So, until the early 20th century, Southern prisoners were kept on private plantations and on company-run labor camps where they laid railroad tracks, built levees, and mined coal. Former shareholders built empires that were bigger than those of most slave owners before the war. Nathan Bedford Forrest, first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, controlled all convicts in Mississippi for a period. U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar company, forced thousands of prisoners to slave in its coal mines. Lessees went to extreme lengths to extract profits. In 1871, Tennessee lessees Thomas O'Connor forced convicts to work in mines and went as far as collecting their urine to sell to local tanneries. When they died from exhaustion or disease, he sold their bodies to medical schools at Nashville for students to practice on. Companies like using convicts in part because, unlike free workers, they could be driven by torture. One common form of punishment was watering, in which a prisoner was strapped down, a funnel forced into his mouth, and water poured in so as to distend the stomach to such a degree that it put pressure on the heart, making the prisoner feel that he was going to die. Another punishment was stringing up, in which a cord was wrapped around the men's thumb, flung over a tree limb, and tightened until the men hung suspended, sometimes for hours. Whipping was common. An Alabama government inspection showed that in 2 weeks period in 1889, 165 prisoners were flogged. Arkansas didn't ban the lash until 1967. Lessees gave a cut of the profits to the states, ensuring that the system would endure. Between 1880 and 1904, Alabama profit from leasing state convicts made up 10% of the state's budget. By 1886, the United States Commission of Labor reported that when leasing were practiced, the average revenues were nearly 4 times the cost of running prisons. Writer George Washington Cable, in an 1885 Analysis of Convict Leasing, wrote the system springs primarily from the idea that the possession of a convict's person is an opportunity for the state to make money, that the amount to be made is whatever can be wrung from him, and that's without regards to moral or mortal consequences. The penitentiaries, whose annual report shows the largest case balance paid into the state treasury, is the best penitentiary. This maniacal drive for profit managed to create a system that was more deadly than slavery. Between 1870 and 1901, some 3,000 Louisiana convicts, most of whom were black, died under the lease of a man named Samuel Lawrence James. Before the Civil War, only a handful of planters owned more than 1,000 convicts, and there is no record of anyone allowing 3,000 valuable human chattel to die. Throughout the South, annual convicts' death rates range from 16% to 25%, a mortality rate that would rival the Soviet gulags to come. There are simple no incentives for lessees to avoid working people to death. In 1883, one Southern man told the National Conference of Charities and Corrections, "Before the war, we owned the Negroes. If a man had a good Negro, he could afford to take care of him. If he was sick, get a doctor. But these convicts, we don't own them. One dies, get another." States became jealous of the profit private companies were making, so in the early 20th century, they bought plantations on their own and eventually stopped leasing to private companies. 10 years after abolishing convict leasing, Mississippi was making $600,000, with $14.7 million in 2008 dollars from prison labor. It was in this world that a man named Treyvon Hutto would learn how to run a prison as a business. Core civic prisons aren't nearly as brutal labor camps under convict leasing of the 20th century state-run plantations, but they still go to grotesque lengths to make a dollar. I saw this firsthand when in 2014 I went undercover as a prison guard in the Core Civic Prison in Louisiana. There I met a man who lost his leg to gangrene after begging for months for medical care. Core Civic was often resistant to sending prisoners to the hospital. Their contract required that outside medical visits be funded by the company. Educational programs were axed to save money. To keep costs low, guards were paid $9 an hour, and oftentimes there were no more than 24 on duty. Armed with nothing but radios to run a prison of more than 1,500 inmates, the prison was incredibly violent as a result. In a 4-month period in 2015, the company reported finding some 200 weapons, 23 times more than the state maximum security prisons. I knew one inmate who committed suicide after repeatedly going on hunger strikes to demand mental health service in a prison with only one part-time psychologist. When he died, he weighed 71 pounds. Private prisons, according to the 2016 Department of Justice studies, are consistently more violent than their already dismal public counterparts. Yet while we went through training to become guards, we were taught that if we saw inmates stab each other, we were not to intervene. We are not going to pay you that much, our instructors told us. Our job was simply to shout the word "stop fighting," thus protecting the company's liability and avoiding any potentially costly harms to ourselves. Our job, after all, was to deliver value to our shareholders. If them fools want to cut each other, the instructor said, well, happy cutting. In May 2017, I bought a single share in the company in order to attend their annual shareholder meeting. As I sat and watched Treyvon Hutto and other corporate executives discuss how their company objective was to serve the public good, I wonder how many times such meetings had been held throughout American history. How many times had men, be they private prison executives or convict lessees, gotten together to perform this ritual? They sat in the company headquarters of legislative office, far from their prisons or labor camps, and craft stories that soothe their consciences. They convinced themselves with remarkable ease that they are in the business of punishment because it makes the world better, not because it makes them rich. All right. So, here, true history of Americans' private prison industry, right? I found that article there, right? It talks about how this Correction Corporation of America, how it makes about $1.8 billion on private prison corporations, right? They're known today as Core Civics. It gives you the history of a dude named Treyvon Hutto, right? He was one that ran a cotton plantation the size, they say, about like Manhattan. And they said that, matter of fact, I think it was that Don Hutto and I think his whole family, I think they ran plantation all the way up to about 1967, right? And most of the prisons that were down in the South were plantations. So remember when they talked about the 40 acres and the mules, and now they gave it to us, is because why? They end up giving a lot of that land back to them, right? They don't talk about that part, right? A lot of that land that was given back to them. And so now you have plantations with no workers, and so you know how they did it. Ain't that right, Yaba Bay? Used that law, didn't they? With that 13th Amendment, right? Slavery was abolished except for, that's that but, right? But, right? So we see that on these southern plantations. Remember the movie Life, right? Hoppin' Bob. Remember Hoppin' Bob ass? I come down, I ain't so nice like Captain Boss. I come down and slap the black off here. He was happy. He had the gun. He had a privilege. We still see that today. We got a lot of hopping bobs out here. A lot of mugs out here love to take the gun and put the whip and then put it on. Did I do it right for you, master? So we got a lot of that going on, right? And so what we do, the hopping bobs, you're going to empower to torture, right? Right? Just because you won't meet the labor quota. Now, again, I thought you in there for punishment, time out, we're going to rehabilitate you, get your mind right. No, that ain't what it was really about, was it? So we see that this Don Hutto did such a good job at doing what he do. That was in Texas. He get a call up from Arkansas. Hey, come on down here, man. We're going to hire you run this entire prison system we got down here. Because all our shit down here is plantation. You be good for that. Huh? So what happens? This is the beginning how they're going to start running profits to the state. Right? Ability to run a prison that put money to the state coffer. So this idea start to attract, and they said 2 businessmen in particular, but they ain't going to tell you what their name is. I'm going to have to do the research how to figure out who these 2 was, right? 2-man name, they don't even, they always want anonymity on certain aspects of things, right? So they found this corporation that they create, which they still don't tell the name of, right? In the article, they don't tell who the name is, but it was these 2 that is bringing up the idea about running prisons and sell shares on the stock market. That was the beginning of it, right? And so we got the prisons had been privatized before. So they go all the way back to the first privatized was up in Louisiana back in about 1844, right? And it's about 9 years after it had opened, they had this company called the Manhattan Pratt and Ward ran it as a factory. Now, factory is the same thing as plantation. Now, those who came will go back a little bit, back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, you know what I'm saying? We worked in the factories, right? We worked in the factories, right? There was a lot of factory jobs, right? Kind of like plantation jobs, right? You ever seen this movie called Blue Collar with Richard Pryor in it? Go watch it. See if you can find that. It's called Blue Collar with Richard Pryor. You know what I'm saying? It's about them working in the Detroit plant, right? I think Yafo Kato, I think his name, Kato Yafo, something like that, right? Check that movie out if you can find it, right? Then you'll know what I'm talking about. All right, so goes on and talks a little bit more as into about the tyranny. Once these prisons got privatized, the tyranny started, right? Because now you ain't got no real state legislation. It's really the private and the people who are running it to make sure that everything is running copacetic. But it ain't about the copaceticness. It's about the profitability of it, right? And so just, you're in this environment. You got hopping Bob up in there. You know what I'm saying? We got this mass production of stuff to get this money out. We see now why they was out there, the chain gang and making the rolls, because again, they was getting paid for that, right? They get paid to do that, but the convict ain't getting the money, right? He not getting the money. The money going to the penitentiary, and the penitentiary money is going to either the stockholders or again they try to take it out the state hand, right? Okay, take it out the state hand. So they would never have an annual penitentiary report, right? When they was in private, is because why the information would come back about how the prison violence, how the lack of rehabilitation, the recidivism is revolving door. Mugger be doing crimes. Those who got family members who know what I'm talking about. You have a family member that do something, and then he'll get out, and then he'll go back in, and then he'll come out, and then he'll come back in. Recidivism, right? He come in and out, in and out. It'd be a cycle, right? Be stuck, right? It's because ain't no rehabbing the shit. There ain't no rehabbing that. You come in, okay, even if you get a GED, what good is that when you still can't get a job, right? Right? But you can get a job as long as you got 3 hots in the cot and you locked up. Oh, they got work for you, but on the outside, you can't get no job. Something backwards with this, right? Okay, whatever, right? So it says they rather have profits rather than rehabilitations, which was the guiding principles of they said the early penitentiary. That's still to this day. And then, the thing they always want to say was throughout the South. Slavery was only in the South. It's only those in the Confederate. No, nigga, it was all this shit. They ain't no, that's the game they like playing. They don't try to make a difference between them and when Harriet Tubman said, we going to get free in the North. He trying to make it seem like you're talking about North in the United States. They were talking about Canada. Let's get that shit straight. Stop lying, How else y'all got built up in the North? Y'all ain't did. You ain't done nothing. You ain't building nothing. Stop it. So it says it was state's largest factories, right? There was an overgrown monopoly all overnight, boy. When these started to get more people getting locked up, the business became good, became more lucrative, became more profitable. And they said, man, we got a business here. And we see what happened down in the South, the Southern textiles. It was the largest factory of the west of the Mississippi. Because nobody can outwork us. But the problem is, we can outwork everybody, but we can't get the profits from the work that we put in. Because, see, we know we would be the richest people on the planet because you can't outwork us. But you have to make yourself in the mind to make you seem like we deem less than in order to, make what you do. But again, you laugh now, you got now, we get later, we laugh later. You understand? That's how it works. That's how it works. He don't believe in that, right? So we see that also it talked about in that article, it talked about the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, Nathan Bedford Forrest, control all convicts in Mississippi. Damn. You know that was some bullshit in there. Pretty much that's what's happening today. It's just that we don't know who the Grand Wizard is. You know what I'm saying? We just don't know who the Grand Wizard is, right? And then companies like U.S. Steel, who was the first billion-dollar company, right? Forced thousands of prisoners to slave in coal mines. I worked at U.S. Steel once upon a time. I wish I'd have knew that shit then. I wish I'd have known that then, right? See? That kind of shit right there. Right? So it went on to say that lessees went extreme lengths to extract profits, right? And so they say by 1871, Tennessee lessee Thomas O'Connor, he was forcing convicts to work in mines. Now again, wait a minute. If I'm in here to do the crime of what I've done to society, right? I'm digging in coal mines. You got me doing all. Wait a minute. What? Damn, ain't no regulations as to what kind of shit I'm probably doing. Oh, there's no merit to it. It's just I lose all rights. Again, the difference between a convict and a slave is the same thing according to the 13th Amendment, right? Right? You know, slavery is abolished except for crime. So when you get a crime and get locked up, you go back to the state of slave. So convict and slave is actually synonymous. They're the same, right? Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. Okay. All right. So then, then it's just like that torture, right? You heard some of the stuff that I read in there, right? Talking about watering. Now, we heard waterboard back when they was talking about with Guantanamo Bay. They were talking about waterboard. Well, that go all the way back to when they were talking about it inside. They were watering them, right? Was they to strap a prisoner down, put the funnel in his mouth, water pour in so as to distend his stomach. So they would blow your damn stomach up, right? Blow your damn stomach up so damn big to the degree that the pressure will put on your heart. Your heart will be like, God damn, would you stop putting all this damn water in me? Huh? My shit about to bust. Right? And so what happened? Making the prisoner feel like he was going to die. Then they would do what? Stringing up. Now, stringing up was what? They put a cord, wrap it around a man's thumb, flung it over a damn tree of a limb, tighten it until the man hung up suspended. And they would do that for hours. Now, whipping was common. Now, whipping was, that's a lot of us, how we look at it. We got whippings we coming up. We don't understand that's systemic from all that shit, right? And so when we heard, I remember when that time when Charles Barkley was talking about, we're in the South, that's what we do. Our parents, we whoop. And then see the white people like, oh, that's so cruel. We look like, oh, shit, that's how I straighten a nigga up. Right? And here they is who implemented that shit to us and can't fathom that why we use it. You tell me, right? So we would see also that they say they have numbers where about 165 prisoners was flogged. Arkansas had banned the lash in 1967. Way too late by then. You've been around since 1844, and you talking about 1967. You're gonna stop? Don't get humane now. You just found a new way to do it, right? That's all. Well, you found another way to do it. Just get you 100. So let me go on. Let's see. So it talked about a little bit more stuff. Like it talked about like the leasing state comments made up to 10% of the state's budget. And so about 1886, they said the U.S. Commission of Labor reported that leasing was practiced. The average revenue was nearly 4 times the cost of running prisons. So they were making 4 handfuls over. So the motherfucker was looking at all that profit. So you know the grandiose idea was coming up. How do we keep getting niggas in here? How are we going to keep getting niggas in here? So now let's go back and fast forward. Let's go back a little bit now. Now we see what that crime bill came in. We see how the 93 crime bill, when he's sitting there talking about, then they passed it in 94. We see that there was something implemented with the music. How they say we're going to do this because they see that was coming. And then we understand that the crack cocaine was also part of it. So do we see the connection? Do we see the connection? So black folks, when you sit out here looking at each other and ain't got no love for them and thinking all this, and that, you better understand the histories of what's been laid and what has been put on us. You understand? Quit looking at yourself as you the worst thing that ever happened. You the greatest thing that ever happened, but you just had to be put in a condition because you would be so much greater than the other person. He can't stand it. Now, you know, I've been around a jealous mug. Nigga got that smirk on his face. Like, was some stink or something? What's wrong with you, homie? Huh? What's wrong with you? That's that thing, right? Well, this is probably outside of us that's like that. It's bad enough we got it amongst ourselves, but this is something outside of us. So all I got to do is I got to keep you in all this. So we go back, the school's got to be segregated, so I got to make sure you don't learn enough, right? I got to do all kinds of things to keep you in this condition because you are great. You are great. Don't ever forget that. You are great. Anytime somebody got to go and cheat and do every kind of shit to try to put your ass and fuck you up, you better than them. So we're going to end out on this. Right? You better than them. I'm going to let this be self-explanatory. Okay? Ain't no more minutes, there's no more messages out there. I would open the phone line. Did anybody want to call? Because let me go ahead and put it up there. You know what I'm saying? You can call in, goddammit, because I'll do that, right? But anyway, let me go ahead and play this first. Check this out. And this is what, after all that's been just said and laid down, this should be self-explanatory. Check it out. My ancestors owned 41 slaves. What do I owe their descendants? You know I'm going to say that again. My ancestors owned 41 slaves. What do I owe their descendants? This story is coming out of The America. Looks like the story was done back in November 28, 2018. And this is how it reads. A few years ago, Cheryl Benedict, an education administrator and historian from Virginia, and my first cousin discovered on Ancestry.com that our great-great-great-grandfather, a Texas farm named Augustus Foscue, had owned 41 slaves. I was sad and not surprised, although I grew up in Brussels, the child of American musicians who did not inherit great wealth. My family is white and middle class, with branches rooted among the pre-revolutionary English immigrants who accepted slaveholding as a way of life. My first thought was that I should research our family history more, and then write about it. My ancestors had done something wrong. Had not been known, now it was. Shining a light on the truth, followed by some sort of atonement, seemed the right thing to do, especially at a time of rising and re-legitimized white supremacy in the United States, truth-telling as atonement. It would also be an education growing up. I attended Belgium's Écoles Communales. In school, I did not learn about the United States history. For me, as a kid, America was more cultural and commercial than political or historical. Baseball and Mark Twain musicals and McDonald's. My attitude was naive and ill-considered. As editors rejected draft after draft, it became clear that I was getting something important wrong. My mistake, typical of white Americans, was treating slavery as if it were a mystery buried in the past. I had not known about my ancestor Augustus. My family had not talked about slavery. Now we did. But confession is not atonement. And as one African-American historian or economist after another point out to me, slavery is not a mystery, and it is not past. What white Americans treat as historical curiosity, something to investigate if we choose to, it is to black American a cruel, unavoidable ghost that haunts this nation's cities, schools, hospitals, and prisons. The lack of understanding about slavery imminence is why white acts of private atonement are considered conscious slaves that do little to close the black-white gap. William Darity, an economist at Duke University, told me he calls symbolic actions laissez-faire reparations and argues that people who discover they have slave-owning ancestors are morally obligated to campaign for national reparations. Because slavery was a societal institution enshrined in the Constitution and had societal consequences that have not been fixed, its reparations must be societal. Still, with the Internet revolution unveiling more family histories and efforts at a federal reparation movement stalled, there is a small but growing group of descendants of slave owners conducting private efforts at atonement. People I talk to are funding scholarship for black youth, putting up plaques in honor of people their families enslaved, and engaging in dialogue aimed at promoting racial healing. They are writing books and making movies and documenting how the devastating inequalities set up by slavery were maintained during Reconstruction and the establishment of Jim Crow laws in the post-civil rights era. Universities, banks, and other institutions are owning up to their past involvements with slavery. What to make of their efforts? Are they really useless? Is it something better than nothing? Do good intentions count for anything? Guy Mount Emerson, an African-American historian who was part of the scholarly team that recently uncovered the University of Chicago historical ties to slavery, says that symbolic actions, even if it's symbolic, may have the potential to heal current relationships. But Mr. Emerson, who has lectured on reparations at the University of Chicago, says that according to reparation theory, it is up to the people who were harmed to determine what might constitute sufficient restorative action. It is up to black folks to say when this is enough. Says Mr. Emerson, it's a very hard question. How do you forgive the unforgivable? How do you repair the irreparable? Under President Trump, white interest in private reparation efforts have been on the rise, says Tom DeWolf, a director at Coming to the Table, a nonprofit based at Eastern Mennonite University that brings together the descendants of slave owners and enslaved people. Since the 2016 election, the number of monthly visitors to the organization website has increased from 3,000 a month to over 13,000. The number of affiliate working groups has multiplied. They aim to inject more awareness into the public space about links between slavery and current inequalities. This year, Coming to the Table released a 21-page guide on how to atone privately for slavery. It has over 100 suggestions, including donating to the United Negro College Fund, hiring African-American lawyers and doctors, and contributing family archives to genealogy websites like Our Black Ancestry and Afrogenius. African Americans' genealogies are often incomplete because enslaved peoples generally were not named in census documents until 1870. We suggest that before acting, European Americans should take their cues from African Americans as to when and how to approach and implement reparations. The guide suggests African Americans may wish to engage in some of these activities so as to ensure that trust, healing, and true reparations of the harms are archived. The Reparation Guide also recommends supporting H.R. 40, a bill for which former Representative John Conyers Jr., Democrat of Michigan, campaigned since the 1980s. The bill, named after the 40 acres of land that newly emancipated African Americans were promised and never given after the Civil War, would establish a commission to study the impact of slavery and suggest remedies. Mr. DeWolf, who has written 2 books on the subject, is a descendant of a Rhode Island family that once controlled one of the country's biggest slave trading enterprises. Since the DeWolf shipped 10,000 people from West Africa, they shaped the ancestry as many as 500,000 African Americans. In 2008, a DeWolf family member named Katrina Brown released Traces of the Trade, Story from the Deep North, a riveting documentary that highlights slavery in northern states and chronicles members of the family traveling to New England, Ghana, and Cuba and their anguished debates over privilege, legacy, and reparations. White people should think of reparations as a poker game where somebody has been cheating, says Mr. Brown. If somebody said, "I've been cheating the whole game and now I'm going to stop cheating," wouldn't you want your money back? Whether your family owned slaves is a question that anybody with Southern roots should probably ask themselves, says Krista Cowan, who has researched slavery for Ancestry.com. The 1850 and 1860 census available online are valuable because they include so-called slave schedules that list the number of genders and ages of enslaved people. Even if your family wasn't wealthy, it's worth checking, says Miss Cowan, who is white and discovered her own slave-owning ancestry and black cousins through census records. It is also a question for Americans from northern states. In the 17th and 18th centuries, millions of northerns owned slaves. To be sure, even if the truth is available, many white Americans still do not like to confront slavery. And when they do not feel guilty about it. Everybody likes to talk about how their ancestors fought in the Confederacy, but nobody likes to talk about how they owned slaves. Bruce Levine, the author of The Fall of the House of Dixie, A History of the 19th Century South, tells me you can't have one without the other. A survey in 2016 by political scientists found that 72.4% of white Americans questioned felt not guilty at all about the privileges and benefits they receive as white Americans. Growing up in Baltimore in the 1950s, Phoebe Kilby never heard about her slave-owning ancestors. A decade ago, she found documents online that proved that her family had owned enslaved peoples. Further research led her to meeting several descendants of people her family had owned as slaves, including people to whom she was genetically related. She has befriended her black relatives, helped obtain funding for a Virginia State Historical Highway, sign that honors civil rights activists in the family, and endowed scholarships for their grandchildren. We could wait for Congress, or we can listen to the expressed desires of our African American cousins and respond directly ourselves, she says. The African American writer Betty Kilby, one of Phoebe's relatives and a plaintiff in a school desegregation case in Virginia in the 1950s, said she had mixed emotions when Phoebe contacted her. "But I had promised to fight against hate, so I had to meet her. They are now close friends that speak together at churches, colleges, and community groups." Ms. Kilby says she supports national economic reparations and says private initiatives could offer a template for a wider political initiative. What Phoebe has done is provided scholarship for the descendants of the people her family enslaved. That is restitution. She says maybe that's the model nationally. Some black thinkers say symbolic justice are meaningless if not accompanied by a demand for political and economic reparations. It's not a matter of personal guilt, it's a matter of national responsibility, says Mr. Darity, the Duke University economist. The persistent structural inequality in the United States is why even white Americans not descended from slave owners should support reparations, because they have benefited, says Mr. Darity. Reparations, he says, should go to anybody who has an ancestor who was enslaved and anybody who has identified as black for 10 years or more. Growing body of academics research has firmed up the links between slavery and current inequalities. A lot of racism in the United States developed after slavery, says Sven Beckert, the author of Empire of Cotton, a global history and a professor at Harvard. African Americans were free, but they faced harsh discrimination in labor, property, and education markets, among other things. Mr. Beckert compares the slow and still unfilled reckoning of American whites with slavery to that of Germany's resolution of its guilt over Nazism after World War II. The difference, says Mr. Darity, is that the United States is not a defeated nation in the aftermath of a great war seeking to restore its legitimacy in the international community. In recent papers, Slavery, Education, and Equality, two European academics, Griselia Bertocci and Arcangelo D'Amico, studied the influence of slavery across the United States country. They found that countries that once had rates of high slave ownership are not always poor, but they consistently had unequal rates of educational attainment. Current inequalities, they wrote, is primarily influenced by slavery through the unequal education attainment of blacks and whites. Over time, Mr. Bertocci tells me, even after accounting for many other factors, slavery remains a persistent determinant of today's inequalities. There is no mystery. Our wrong is present. All right, so that was the last reading for those. Again, you might get a little weary of the reading, but again, somebody got to feed you. Somebody got to do it, because otherwise they say, well, you can't do certain things. So I found a way to do it in the way I'm doing it. Now, again, this person here, we've seen this, look like her name was Cheryl Benedict. Look like she found out her ancestors had owned about 41 slaves, and, as an educator, she was an education administrator, historian from Virginia, right? She had a first cousin discovered on Ancestry.com that the great-great-great-great-grandfather, when Texas named Augustus Foscue, had owned about 41 slaves, right? And she was saddened. Oh, my God. I know I'm white, but I didn't think I had slavery in my... Why else you get here? How else you get here? Even if you came as servitude at one time, if your ancestors go back to when there was servitude, which was a period of time, right? You get 7 years. As you served your time, you got a package. You get a starter package. You get money, clothes, and you got land. So you was getting 50 acres for every person that was with you. So let's say during the time of your servitude, you found your little honey. You had kids, so that's 50 for your wife, 50 acres, 50 for, let's say you got two or three kids, that's 50. When you leave up out of there, you got a nice starter kit compared to the slaves, which is my ancestors, right? We ain't getting nothing. Just use free. Oh, y'all can't do nothing. Well, how about y'all just come on back and work on the old plantation? We'll pay you. Huh? See? So here's a message to those who should hear. Like, okay, when you look in your ancestors, like, matter of fact, what was the dude that J-Lo, the white dude that J-Lo ended up being with? What's that white dude name? He found out on his Ancestry.com. I can't think of his name. He found out he had it. And he tried to get them not to show that. He was like, no, I don't want anybody to know that. Yes, you too. Huh? Right? So why does it sadden you? Because you got to do like this person's saying. What do I owe? Huh? A lot of you know you owe, but you don't want to say nothing about it. You just want to say, too bad, so glad. It's not my problem. I didn't do it to you, but you're benefiting from it, right? Just like those who benefit from what we look at. Let's just look at what the theme was today. How many people made money off the transaction that took place in the increments that it did? Because it started from the mid-'80s, got into the music, got into legislation, was implemented, and people, you know what I'm saying? And then look at all the corporations that you'd be surprised, Starbucks, McDonald's, you name it, all have a lot of their products being made right up in them prisons, right? So everybody in business is looking for a way to cut the corner so they can make more profit. Well, what more profitability than to have somebody doing shit for free? Huh? So everybody looking at us, oh, woe is you. I don't care what happens. I don't care how you got that. Yeah, well, okay. Remember them words you say. Remember when you have to say them words again when you try to change that story up and say, that ain't what I meant. I don't know. I remember saying that. Yeah, you did. We playing it today. So we're going to be playing it tomorrow when it's your turn, when you got to stand before and have to reaccount for that, right? You didn't care. Well, guess what? When the jury comes out, when we sitting there, we don't care. We don't care either, right? Because, they think they got the game all figured out, right? Anyway, so we see that this, should go through, find out the thing, give us a little bit of history as to, what then transpired and so forth. So again, it's like typical of white Americans was treating slavery as if it was a mystery buried in the past. That's why they say get over it. You don't see the continuation of what happened then. It's still perpetuating. It's still live and thriving today. Just because you don't see niggas out there picking cotton, right? You'll see a chain gang, but you don't even equate that to that. You see the conditions and the communities that they live in. You say that they brought the... Now, again, as I said, I'm going to say it again. We live in communities that's owned by other people. But they be ran down, streets tore up, property no good, and you say, you put it on us. No, you the slumlord. You the motherfucking slumlord. You the motherfucker don't put no money into the shit. Because the way you create the game, you say, there is no value if black folks live there. So you don't have to put no money in it. But you're the one create that game. But then you put the onus on them. And see, look at them. They're tearing up everything. Well, let me tell you something. When anybody had property and you rent, and somebody should tear it up, right? It's coming on you to fix it, and you charge the tenant, right? But if you love your property, you gonna maintain it, right? You don't let nobody run your shit down. So how the properties get run down like that? Because you can get no shit about it. But now, with rejustification, have y'all noticed lately that all the places that we lived in, it seems like white folks is going back over there now, getting up because the land is cheap. See, they flied it out when they had to remember, going back to integration. Oh, you gonna go to school? Oh, what we're gonna do is we're gonna live in the communities all with us, and that way we be able to control, just like they're about to do, is it tonight? Archie Bunker coming on tonight, right? All in the family. They're gonna do all in the family. They're only gonna come on tonight because motherfuckers gonna be so offended because you know what I'm saying? I can't believe. Oh, that's what we used to watch on TV. That shit was pretty funny to me back in the day. Motherfucker was telling like a T.I. is, huh? Right? Like I said, I could deal with a motherfucker who's straight up like that than a motherfucker who's smiling in my face and doing all kinds of shit. I'd rather have an Archie Bunker type. You feel what I'm saying? Like a lot of people were offended. Oh, Trump, he said, I like that motherfucker because I know where he coming from. This other motherfucker smiling in the face and you know what I'm saying, and got foundations and all kinds of shit, right? But you trusting in that one. Don't you rather for somebody tell you straight up than somebody over here playing with you? So Archie Bunker come all in the family, come on now, I think, and the Jefferson. I'm just gonna watch because I know they're gonna come on one time. Then they're gonna do it live, right? So I'm just for FYI, right? So anyway. So again, they say bury it. See, that's the mind. They don't want to deal with that because that's why they say white guilt. And if you're blaming us, no, it ain't blaming. We are the recipients of what transpired that still perpetuate. Again, remember the other day when I read in law about accomplice. Until you make that remedy, do what you're supposed to do lawfully, legally, the onus does not fall on you. You are still guilt by being an accomplice. knowingly know what had transpired and have done nothing to remedy it makes you guilty. So I don't understand what this hoopla about, what people want to say, they don't want to give reparations. Then guess what you're doing? See, the creator is the greatest chess player ever. He done gave y'all so many outs, but he know you're not going to take it. He done gave you so many outs, but you won't take it. So guess what? You know, like when you go to court on that traffic ticket and you be in there, be crying and shit, and you got to wait for your name to be called up, and you got called for the judge. Huh? When it's your turn, when they call your name, everything you try to come with, I got a defense for. I gave you this. You didn't take that. You didn't take that. You didn't take that. Why? What's your answer now? You ain't got no answer. You have no answer. You never had an answer, but you like to play the game. So anyway, then I gave some time. Anybody want to call? The number is 262-922-8755. One time, 262-922-8755. You want to call in? If not, I'm going to end the show because I didn't know it was going to be. I was already 3 hours and 30 minutes. Boy, I've been going at it, huh? So let me say once again, all those in the house, I gotta give a shout out to my family in the house. I'm not sure who this is, but I'm gonna get to you anyway. I got Kimmy Nichols in the house, giving a happy birthday to Malcolm X. I see Leonard DeYuta, that's my brother there. He always good in there. Mr. Spencer 620. So have Yahya Abdul Kabir Bey, Sharon Washington, and I think I said Mr. Spencer 620 already. So again, it is what it is, right? People play with us and try to act as if like we so damn stupid that we can't see what's been laid before us. But again, we in another day, another time. And that's why they're coming so much now trying to shut down this social media, because they thought we going to be in here doing cat videos and farting and all that other crazy shit. Not knowing we going to take the shit that we know that we talk about and we going to put it out there. But again, it's getting to the fact that the truth was so burning. Let's say putting a burning reef on top of somebody's head and you can't put the fire out. So what we're going to do is going to extinguish a lot of that. So that's why a lot of times it'll be hard for me to get on. And my body ain't going to try to do all that. Because again, I ain't breaking no rules. I'm just telling the truth. So we're going to end it on that. Again, like I say, y'all stay black, peace, love, and all that. To my next show. Hopefully it's tomorrow. I got plans for tomorrow, but you know, like I said, I'm going to show y'all some of the stuff that do when I be trying to get in. And got a monkey and shit come on talking about we still working on your shit. I'm like, what? I mean, working on. I was looking. I see other people on. Be like, well, how come they on, but I ain't on? But anyway, to the next show. Peace, love, and hair grease and all that. Much love to y'all.
Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, and everybody in the white power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything. Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
Luther and I and everyone in this arena tonight are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Race is when you use your power and influence to subject people into inferiority. Utterances can't be racist.
Look around you, man. They own this shit. They own this couch you sitting on, them shoes you got on your feet, this building, this school, this country, you. We're behind enemy lines, dog.
So you must first of all remember that this system was not originally designed with black people in mind. Right on. And it definitely was not prepared for black people to in the end begin to demand their rights and an equal share in this country which they died for. Right on. Hey, and we definitely are not going back to Africa.
In the church, we used to sing the song, "Good news, the chariot is coming." While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. What good news for the sheep might be bad news to the wolf.
They say, oh, things are getting so much better for you. In 1849, it was hitting blacks on the head 100 times a day. In 1990, they hit them 48 times a day. Isn't it better? Oh, it's got to be better. You're saying 52 blows.
The only purpose of most black Americans on earth today is to destroy.
I think that's noble. Italians love Italians. When Irish love Irish. But when a nigga loves a nigga, it's an unpardonable sin. They have blood in their hands. When we say they have blood in their hands, we are not saying him, George Bezos, went and killed. But white people colonized us. They dispersed us. They enslaved our people. They sucked our economy dry. They are still sucking it dry even today. That's white people. Tony Blair, George Bush, Napoleon Bonaparte, Leopold, Adolf Hitler, Benjamin Netanyahu. All white people, they are the same. They are racist and they are full of hate.
I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
Why am I here?
Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
You got to understand that white America has an uncanny way of making the victim the victimizer. Excuse me, master, for putting my head in the way of your club. Not that your club is brutalizing my head and putting hickeys on it. My head got in the way of your free swing and broke your shiny stick, and I want to apologize for that.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy. We possess a gigantic network of information to which we have almost no access.
Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the sixth version.
5 ones before me. There are only 2 possible explanations. There were 5 ones before me. Either no one told me, or no one knows.
Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to You can't make me do anything like Chris!
Choice. The problem is choice.
Let us remember that we are not brutalized because we're Baptist. We're not brutalized because we're Methodist. We're not brutalized because we're Muslim. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America.
Because white people made him to be what he is. They made him to look evil, because that's their role, to make all of us black people to look evil and to hate ourselves. I can't hate.
You're a nigga till you die. If you're a poor nigga, you're a poor nigga. If you're a rich nigga, you're a rich nigga. But you never stop being a nigga. And if you get to be educated, you're just an educated nigga.
I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism.
That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy.
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching you and I and trying to tell the white man to get this powder keg out of his house. Let the black man separate from his house. Let the black man have his own house. Let the black man have his own land and his own property.
I thought the bitch was white! Damn it! I thought the bitch was white!
That's true. I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually, it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you, and they're your allies and your cousins, well, naturally it would follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people.
Now, check it out. The white ball dominates everything, right? Knocks the shit out the yellow ball, the red ball, right? And the game's over when the white ball drives the black ball completely off the table.
But you have to see that all of this is hypocrisy.
I love Malcolm. Malcolm called me the Sunday that he died. I was working Basin Street East. He said, Brother Greg, you coming by today? And I said, Malcolm, I love you. And I said, I love you so much, I don't even want to take a chance to be there. He said, what do you mean, Brother Greg? I said, well, I close tonight, Sunday night at Basin Street East. And I said, but I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning. And I'm going to Chicago, and I had way beneath my salary, booked me into a college about 10 miles from the airport. And I'm going to go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm going to stay there until they tell me you dead. Because I'm not going to let this government get two of us for the price of one. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to come there. Because today, the United States government is going to get you.